Chapter 3477. The Light Saint's expression seemed to freeze all of a sudden. He didn't expect that the final result would be like this. His all-out attack was simply too weak in front of Yi Shiwen. He didn't even have the chance to finish the 5 moves that he had prepared to stall for time. He only managed to execute the second move. He didn't even have the chance to execute the third move that he originally planned to kill Yi Shiwen. It wasn't that he didn't work hard enough, but Yi Shiwen was too strong. Even though he had done his best, he was still too weak in front of Yi Shiwen at this time. He widened his eyes as if he still couldn't believe it. He couldn't understand how the situation had deteriorated to such a point in such a short period of time. He, who was once invincible in this realm, couldn't even defeat a newcomer who had only achieved Tao for 10,000 years. How did everything turn out like this? For a moment, there was silence. Except for Yi Shiwen directly putting the corpse of the Light Saint into his pocket and watering it into the world tree. Everyone was stunned. No one expected to see such a scene. In a short period of time, everything was reversed all of a sudden. No one knew why this happened. However, some people vaguely guessed that it might be related to the fruit that Yi Shiwen had absorbed previously. However, no one knew what that fruit was and why it was so terrifying. However, more people thought of a deeper problem. Yi Shiwen had come in a threatening manner to rescue his disciple and kill the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Unity Emperor. However, they knew very well who the Yin-Yang and Fusion Emperor were. They were the only descendants of the Moon City City Lord. Once they were killed, it was simply unimaginable what the crazy Moon City City Lord would do. One could imagine how terrifying the destruction would be when the two camps collided. The most unlucky ones were those who were caught in the middle. Forget about the East Region camp. It was possible that the Moon City City Lord would raise their satellite city to the ground in order to vent his anger. Even if they were all killed, no one would really punish the Moon City City Lord. The importance of each other was not on the same level at all. Many people had the same thought in their minds. The wind foreboding a storm. At this time, after putting away the corpse of the Light Saint, Yi Shiwen looked at the Yin-Yang and Fusion Emperor again. His gaze almost turned into a tangible sword as it fell directly on the Yin-Yang and Fusion Emperor. The Yin-Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor panicked. He was almost scared out of his wits. He thought that he could kill Yi Shiwen with the help of the Light Holy Venerable. At the beginning, everything went according to what he had recorded. Just when he thought that it would happen, Yi Shiwen suddenly turned the tables. He flipped the table and beat the Holy Venerable Light to death in no time. That was a peak 4th level Heavenly Venerate. He had never imagined that a Heavenly Venerate would be beaten to death so easily. Was the gap between the two sides really that big? He had no way to judge, as he wasn't even a Heavenly Venerate. However, there was one thing he knew, and that was that he was already in extreme danger. Don't come over. If you come over, I'll kill her. I've already placed a curse on her body. As long as I think about it, she'll die. Yin-Yang and Fusion Emperor roared and looked at Yi Shiwen with an incomparably crazed expression. However, before he finished speaking, an invisible beam of light descended from the sky. After a series of fluctuations, Yin-Yang and the Fusion Emperor's physical bodies directly exploded, and their primordial spirits were destroyed. Idiot, you're courting death. Yi Shiwen didn't know when he had appeared in the palace. The enchantments and matrix arrays in the palace couldn't stop him. He couldn't help but sneer. Yin-Yang and Fusion Emperor were too foolish. Did they think that Yi Shiwen was an Emperor Lord? If it was an Imperial Emperor, he might not be able to save Bian Xiaoye in time, because the difference in levels between Imperial Emperors was not that great. However, Yi Shiwen was already a Celestial Master at this time. He could kill Yi Shiwen with just a thought. Yet, he still wanted to commit murder in front of him. He was really courting death. Yi Shiwen waved his hand, and the countless divine law chains on Bian Xiaoye's body disappeared. They even turned into a stream of energy that poured into Bian Xiaoye's body. Her body, which had suffered heavy injuries, began to recover rapidly. After a short while, Bian Xiaoye had already recovered by 70 to 80%. He went straight to the front of Yi Shiwen and respectfully bowed to him. He then said, "Disciple greets master. Disciple is useless. I was captured by someone. I had to trouble Master to rescue me. It's nothing. You're my disciple. If I don't save you, who else should I save? This time, I didn't plan carefully enough. He actually caught this opportunity. Yi Shiwen waved his hand and said, "Thank you, Master," Bian Xiaoye said with a dignified expression. After this incident, she seemed to have grown up a little. Originally, she grew up under Yi Shiwen's protection. Her path was smooth. Even when she stepped into the Emperor Lord realm, Yi Shiwen personally protected her. It could be said that it was extremely smooth. She had never encountered such a dangerous situation. She might really sink from then on. After experiencing such an incident, she also felt the dangers of this world. Even her master couldn't protect her for a lifetime. There were some existences that even her master couldn't deal with, such as the City Lord of Moon City. In the past, she wouldn't have considered these things. She only felt that as long as her master was there, everything would be fine. But now, she would consider more long-term, especially for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could also see from Bian Xiaoye's expression that Bian Xiaoye's willpower had grown a lot. He was slightly gratified. After all, this ordeal didn't turn into a big mistake. Moreover, she had gained a lot from it. As the saying goes, one would be naive if one didn't experience setbacks. People could only grow through constant setbacks. Didn't he also walk this path step by step back then? He didn't know how many times he had experienced life and death. He also didn't know how many opponents he thought he couldn't defeat. Because of this, he was able to reach his current level. None of his opponents could reach his level. But Master, this Yin Yang Infusion Emperor, is the only son of the City Lord of Moon City. Now that Master killed him for me, I'm afraid the City Lord of Moon City won't let it go. Bian Xiaoye said. Although she hadn't come into contact with heavenly venerables, she had heard many things about the City Lord of Moon City. Especially after being entangled by Yin Yang Infusion Emperor, she had investigated a lot about the City Lord of Moon City. From this, she naturally knew that the City Lord of Moon City was not an ordinary protective person. Even if Yi Shiwen seriously injured Yin Yang Infusion Emperor, he would probably be furious. Not to mention killing Yin Yang Infusion Emperor. Both sides would probably shed all pretenses of cordiality, and there would be no turning back. Don't worry, it's fine. Yi Shiwen comforted Bian Xiaoye. However, he knew that there was no turning back between him and the City Lord of Moon City. It wasn't just because of Yin Yang Infusion Emperor. Previously, the City Lord of Moon City had secretly asked the heavenly venerables of the Devil Era to besiege and kill him. This was already a deadly feud. With the City Lord of Moon City's vengeance, Yi Shiwen had only taught Yin Yang Infusion Emperor a lesson, and he was already able to get the heavenly venerables of the Devil Era to besiege and attack him. How could he let it go just because Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor were dead? Unfortunately, when it came to vengeance, Yi Shiwen wasn't inferior to the City Lord of Moon City. He was also a person who believed in an eye for an eye and blood for blood. The City Lord of Moon City had already been so ruthless. If it wasn't for his strength, which far exceeded the expectations of the City Lord of Moon City, he might really have died under the joint attack of several great demon venerables. With such a deep hatred, how could he not take revenge? Therefore, he unscrupulously killed Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor. He didn't give the City Lord of Moon City any leeway. Anyway, things had already come to this point. If he said there was any leeway, he would only be deceiving himself. Since he had already made his move, he wouldn't regret it. Seeing that Yi Shiwen had already said so, Bian Xiaoye naturally wouldn't say anything more. In her heart, since Yi Shiwen had already expressed his stance, he must have a way to deal with it. In her heart, Yi Shiwen's omnipotent image had never wavered. Suddenly, at this moment, Yi Shiwen spoke. Why? Isn't it too late to leave now? Then, Bian Xiaoye only saw a black light flying out of the hall. In an instant, it had already flown tens of millions of miles away. At this moment, she immediately remembered that the black light was Mr. Ghost. Who else could it be? Master, capture him. He was the one who plotted behind the scenes and asked Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor to capture me. Bian Xiaoye quickly reminded Yi Shiwen. Don't worry, he can't escape. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sneer. He had been paying attention to this Mr. Ghost for a long time. He thought that he had concealed himself well, but in fact, he had long been exposed. Nothing could be hidden from his heavenly venerate's heavenly eye. Even if he took a glance at a mortal, he could instantly see through their past and present lives. It could be said that he could see through everything. Only this Mr. Ghost was the only person he couldn't see through. He still didn't know and thought that he had concealed himself well. In other words, he had never thought that he would show weakness, so he left such a big flaw. It was just that at that time, he was dealing with the light venerate and couldn't free himself to deal with Mr. Ghost. Now that he had killed the light venerate, how could he let Mr. Ghost escape? Mr. Ghost fled tens of millions of miles away in an instant. He thought that he had finally escaped and was about to breathe a sigh of relief. However, when he looked back, he was almost scared to death. It turned out that Yi Shiwen had actually followed him. Chapter 3478. After the previous series of battles, Yi Shiwen had easily killed the Holy Lord of Light. He had already understood the gap between him and Yi Shiwen. Now that Yi Shiwen had chased after him, how could he not be shocked? Yi Shiwen chased after him and then trampled on him as if he was trampling on an ant. He wanted to trample him to death. Revered Wu, you've gone too far. Finally, Mr. Ghost couldn't help but make a move. He couldn't just watch as Yi Shiwen trampled him to death. His voice was dry and a little sharp, like a night owl. It was extremely unpleasant to listen to. Mr. Ghost spat out a mouthful of essence chi. His entire body instantly moved hundreds of thousands of miles away to avoid Yi Shiwen's foot. Boom! The place where he was just now was directly trampled through. Countless chi of primordial chaos turned into nothingness, forming a huge hole. Countless chi of primordial chaos in the surrounding filled this hole. Mr. Ghost only felt a chill on his back. It was just a simple kick. How could it be so terrifying? This breath of essence chi consumed at least 1,000 years of his cultivation. Although 1,000 years was just a snap of his fingers for his long cultivation time, it was not for some big move. It was just to avoid such a casual attack. If this continued, how many years of cultivation would be wasted like this? Going too far? Do you think you're qualified to say such words? I like to see what kind of thing you are. How dare you instigate Yin Yang and Integration Emperor to kidnap my disciple? Yi Shiwen sneered. Unknowingly, Yi Shiwen had already surpassed Mr. Ghost. His speed was too fast. Although Mr. Ghost's speed was not slow, he still could not escape in front of Yi Shiwen. In this realm, he was already invincible. He had reached a terrifying realm that no one had ever reached before, and no one would be able to surpass. Mr. Ghost's eyes actually showed a bit of fear. With his cultivation and identity, there should not be anything that could move him. However, Yi Shiwen's continuous breakthroughs had completely exceeded his understanding. Just as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, Mr. Ghost suddenly made his move. In an instant, he burned the magic power in his body, shook the rules in his body, and suddenly sublimated, bursting out millions of strands of immortal light, tens of millions of auspicious lights. In an instant, it transformed into an incomparably huge ghost head. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards Yi Shiwen. This ghost head seemed like it could devour the entire world. In fact, it could indeed devour a small world and turn it into a kingdom of ghosts. He had seen how Yi Shiwen easily defeated Holy Senior Light before. Naturally, he understood how terrifying Yi Shiwen was. Facing such a strong enemy, how could Yi Shiwen not do his best? If he didn't do his best, he might not even have the chance to practice his moves. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen did not move at all. He let the endless ghost aura sweep over him. The exuberant blood in his body erupted like auspicious lights. Originally, it was the nemesis of these evil things. However, Mr. Ghost's ghost technique had been practiced to an extremely profound level. It was already a great way, and it was not an evil thing that could not see the light. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would completely collapse with just a glance. However, this kind of mutual promotion and restraint still existed. The strong blood in Yi Shiwen's body was a strong restraint to this boundless ghost aura. Boom! The blood in Yi Shiwen's body erupted like a frenzied sea, instantly bursting out. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Break for me. Yi Shiwen shouted. When the ghost head was about to engulf him, he clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and an endless amount of magic power condensed on his right fist. The law vibrated and created a terrible storm, and he punched out. In just an instant, the huge ghost head was completely broken. It was directly turned into nothingness under Yi Shiwen's terrifying fist energy. Yi Shiwen's fist energy did not lose momentum and directly blasted towards Mr. Ghost. Although Mr. Ghost was prepared, but his full strength attack was so easily broken by Yi Shiwen, it still made him feel incomparably shocked. He retreated again and again, but Yi Shiwen's fist energy seemed to have locked onto him. With a terrible storm, it instantly chased after him and engulfed him. Boom! With a loud roar, Mr. Ghost screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. His entire body was sent flying. The cloak he used to cover his body was also blasted into pieces on the spot. At this moment, a standard demon body was revealed. His body was covered with black scales, and he looked incomparably sinister. He's actually a demon? Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. Ha! The Moon City Lord can't deny it even if he wants to this time. He actually colluded with the demon. Yi Shiwen naturally knew that he had killed the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor. The Moon City Lord would definitely want to tear him to pieces and even cause a confrontation between the two factions. However, this Mr. Ghost was actually a demon. If this was a collusion between the Moon City Lord and the demon, what could he do? Even if it was only the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor who colluded with the demon, it would at least be a sin of not teaching his children properly. At that time, the most he could do was to act in private. He could not use the power of the Fortune God dynasty to act against him. The other God City lords wouldn't openly support him either. Moreover, when Yi Shiwen said that the Moon City City Lord had colluded with the people of the Devil Path era, it was not just nonsense. It was true. The demon venerables besieging Yi Shiwen had been incited by the Moon City City Lord. Mr. Ghost was also extremely intelligent. He immediately understood Yi Shiwen's plan. Naturally, he understood that with him in hand, even if the Moon City Lord wanted to retaliate against Yi Shiwen, he could not involve the confrontation between the two factions. Even causing a confrontation between the 10 great divine cities and the Fortune God dynasty was something even more far-fetched. This entire plan was perfect. The only flaw was him. However, Yi Shiwen actually had the strength to kill him now. This was the most bitter part of his plan. At this moment, he deeply felt the truth. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and schemes were meaningless, because he would use his absolute strength to destroy all of his schemes and schemes. Thinking of this, the already seriously injured Mr. Ghost vomited a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of blood was lost again. Who knew how many tens of thousands of years of cultivation he had spat out? His vitality was greatly damaged. Thinking of this, his Tao became somewhat unstable. Usually, he was most proud of his schemes. He could play with the heroes of countless eras in the palm of his hand. However, Yi Shiwen had used absolute strength to destroy his schemes. I'll fight it out with you. Even if I die, you can forget about realizing your plans. Mr. Ghost directly vomited a mouthful of blood essence. This mouthful of blood essence turned into a huge ghostly shadow. The moment this huge ghostly shadow appeared, it felt that the entire primal chaos was incomparably cold. The endless primal chaos energy could no longer surge. It completely froze in front of this ghostly shadow. This was a terrifying attack that he had condensed by burning his life. Almost instantly, Yi Shiwen felt the oppressive threat of the ghostly shadow. To think that there are ghost cultivators in the demonic Tao epoch. This is indeed rare. However, it is useless. Do you think you still have a chance to escape from me? Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. 3,000 martial Tao epochs directly formed an imposing figure above Yi Shiwen's head. This figure contained endless martial Tao. It was about the same size as the ghostly shadow, but its aura far surpassed it. It directly broke free from the huge pressure brought by the ghostly shadow. Then it rushed up with a terrifying chi and blood. It instantly rushed to the front of the ghostly shadow and blasted out a simple punch. It was a simple punch. It looked like a fist, but it contained countless great Daos. There were countless variations hidden in this fist, and it was extremely terrifying. Bang! This ghostly shadow was extremely powerful. It roared violently, and shock waves spread out with its body as the center. Then, it rushed towards Yi Shiwen's martial Dao epic incarnation. However, no matter how much it burned or how much it borrowed the power of the heavenly Dao, it still could not withstand a single blow from Yi Shiwen. It could not even withstand a simple punch from Yi Shiwen's martial Dao epic and directly collapsed. Mr. Ghost spat out another mouthful of old blood, suffering a serious injury. An extremely shocked expression flashed across his eyes. Impossible. How could you cultivate so many martial arts by yourself? This is impossible. He felt the 3,000 martial Dao in Yi Shiwen's fist. He only felt that it was impossible. If a person could cultivate one great Dao to the extreme, he could become an extreme powerhouse. Even celestial masters rarely touched other areas because going too far was as bad as falling short. They did not have the experience to comprehend other great Daos. That would instead slow down their progress. It was not cost-effective at all. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He was not constrained in this aspect. Although there were strong and weak martial arts among the 3,000 kinds of martial arts, not all of them were equally powerful. However, he had been cultivating at the same time and had never given up. That was why it was so difficult for him to cultivate. Every step forward required a lot more resources than an ordinary person. However, his strength was also obvious to all. In the same realm, it was difficult to find a match for him. His Dao foundation was incomparably stable and solid. Even after breaking through continuously in the past 10,000 years, it did not leave any sequelae. It could be said that there were pros and cons. This was already beyond Mr. Ghost's understanding. His brain was in a mess. Chapter 3479. In Mr. Ghost's perception, many of Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial arts have been upgraded to the level of celestial master martial arts. Many of them had even reached an unprecedented level of understanding. This was what he could not understand at all. Before setting up this trap, he had tried to find out more about Yi Shiwen. Although they were from different eras, with the intelligence network of the Devil Path era, it was still possible for him to learn some basic information about Yi Shiwen. The more he learned, the more he felt that Yi Shiwen was powerful. However, in his opinion, Yi Shiwen might have taken an unconventional path. Otherwise, his cultivation could not have grown so fast. However, when he fought with Yi Shiwen, he found that Yi Shiwen was not unconventional at all. His foundation was so solid that it could be said to be rare. At least, he had never seen anyone who could be compared to him. But it was precisely because of this that he couldn't understand why Yi Shiwen's cultivation could improve at such a rapid speed when he had a solid foundation and was walking on the righteous path. This was not scientific at all. There must be some secret hidden in it. Every celestial master had their own secrets. However, Yi Shiwen's secrets were hidden to the extent that Yi Shiwen had never seen before. However, at this time, he obviously didn't have the opportunity to explore those things anymore, because Yi Shiwen's next wave of attack had already arrived. After his ghost shadow was broken by Yi Shiwen in one fell swoop, how could it have any power to fight back? Even he himself was severely injured. He could only watch Yi Shiwen's figure pounce in front of him in an instant. With only one hand, Yi Shiwen evolved the power of 6 paths and smashed it down fiercely. The chaos was shattered, and the chi and blood ran through the entire chaos. Mr. Ghost tried his best to resist, but how could he be Yi Shiwen's opponent? He was slapped away by the power of 6 paths of reincarnation evolved from Yi Shiwen's right hand and was smashed into pieces on the spot. Compared to just now, Yi Shiwen was stronger again. Although the speed of his cultivation was not comparable to the beginning, there was no doubt that it was still like adding wings to a tiger for Yi Shiwen. Mr. Ghost tried his best to take back his body with his own strength and escape into the distance. However, Yi Shiwen's left hand transformed into a huge seal and fell down. sealing him on the spot. Even when he was at his peak, there was still a huge gap between him and Yi Shiwen. Not to mention now that he was seriously injured. They couldn't be compared at all. In fact, he didn't even have the slightest power to fight back before he was sealed. After sealing Mr. Ghost, Yi Shiwen immediately took him into his inner world. The reason he did not kill Mr. Ghost on the spot was that he could use this as leverage against the Moon City Lord. Although many people in the Fortune Divine Dynasty had connections with the ancient era, such as the Radiant's Holy Venerable, who was subdued by the Moon City Lord, that was a completely different situation. If Mr. Ghost was taken as a slave, then he would be considered as one of them. However, Mr. Ghost was a master of the Devil Era. A master of the Devil Era had appeared beside Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor and had even captured Yi Shiwen's disciple, Bian Xiaoye. Even if Mr. Ghost didn't know anything about this, he wouldn't be able to hide it. This cut off the possibility of the Moon City Lord using the power of the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty to deal with him. Then, the pressure on Yi Shiwen would be much less. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists. In the end, his strength was not tyrannical enough. If his strength could be on equal footing with the Moon City Lord, then what would he be afraid of? It was just that his strength was insufficient now. So he had to be so careful. Even so, even without the power of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, the strength of the Moon City Lord alone was terrifying enough. So he had to be careful. Yi Shiwen had also gained a certain understanding of the 4 heavenly masters and the city lords of the 10 divine cities after going through this series of events. He was afraid that they had already gotten rid of the influence of the Heavenly Gate tribulation. Moreover, their cultivation had also improved to an unimaginable level. Just Mr. Huang, who was by the Eastern Heavenly Master's side, had terrifying strength no less than the 7th realm. It was not difficult to imagine the strength of the Eastern Heavenly Master himself. He was at least a powerful existence above the 7th realm. As for the other Heavenly Venerate City Lords, since they could stand on equal footing with the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, their strength naturally wouldn't be any weaker than him. This was the peak strength of the entire Fortune God Dynasty. Without them, the martial epic wouldn't be able to compete with the other epics. Therefore, to deal with the Moon City Lord, he had to be careful. He had to take one step at a time. Yi Shiwen would not shrink back, but he would not be reckless either. He had to refine the gunmetal ancestral chi as soon as possible. At that time, even if the Moon City Lord wanted to kill him, it would not be so easy. His physical body would also be strong to an unprecedented level. These were all his capital, and he had walked step by step to the supreme position. After sealing Mr. Ghost, Yi Shiwen quickly returned to the satellite city. At this time, there was no need to look at the results. Just by looking at Yi Shiwen's return, they could already guess it. Many people did not even suspect that Mr. Ghost had the possibility of escaping. Yi Shiwen's previous image of invincibility left too deep an impression on them. "Master, did that guy catch up?" Bian Xiaoye hurriedly stepped forward and asked with concern. "This guy is the Devil Lord of the Devil Era. I have already sealed him." When Yi Shiwen knew that he was the Devil Lord of the Devil Era, he already understood most of it. In addition, Bian Xiaoye had said that the Yin Yang Emperor and the Integration Emperor were also encouraged by Mr. Ghost. How could he not understand? He was probably a spy sent by the Devil Era. The reason why he would encourage Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor to do such a thing was probably to provoke a fierce battle between the two camps. If something happened to Bian Xiaoye with Yi Shiwen's character, how could he let it go? Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor would definitely die. Moreover, the Moon City Lord was anxious to protect his son. Once he saw Yin Yang and Fusion Emperor dead, he would definitely go crazy. At that time, the collision between the two camps of the Moon City and the Eastern region was inevitable. It might even cause the Fortune God Dynasty and the 10 great divine cities to completely separate and confront each other. This was not impossible. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh. Mr. Ghost's plan was too big. Once he succeeded, the consequences would be unimaginable. Unfortunately, he had never expected that he, the only flaw in this situation, would be caught by Yi Shiwen. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had even sealed him. This made the situation favorable to Yi Shiwen. He also had a huge handle on the Moon City Lord. Devil Era? Why is it the Devil Era again? Bian Xiaoya frowned slightly. She did not know that the high-level heavenly venerables of the Fortune God dynasty were at odds with each other to a certain extent. Mr. Go's plan was to completely ignite this antagonism. Therefore, she cannot guess. She only felt that there was a Devil Era everywhere. Previously, Yishuan had already dealt with several of them. Now another one popped up. They had already encountered many devil venerables from the Devil Dao epoch. Yishuan smiled faintly. The Devil Era deserved to be one of the most powerful eras among the many ancient eras. Several devil venerables of the Devil Era had been killed in succession. However, for the Devil Era, it wasn't enough to hurt their vitality. Looking at the 7th Gold epoch, even if all the experts he had sent to Moon City were included, there would only be a dozen or so heavenly venerates. No matter how glorious they had been in the past, it was all in the past now. They had struggled to survive in the great calamities of the world, and they had even almost been conquered by the demon epoch. Even so, they still sent an army to participate in the battle led by the demonic epoch to conquer Moon City, all for the sake of survival. This time, the main force attacking Moon City is the Devil Path Era. The Devil Path Era is also a very powerful ancient era in the recent cataclysm. You have to be careful if you encounter them, but don't worry too much. You also cultivate the Devil Path. Although it's not exactly the same as them. As the origin era of the Devil Path, there will definitely be many scriptures and resources that will be very useful to you. If you fight with the experts of the Devil Path era, it will also be very beneficial for you to comprehend the Devil Path. Do you understand? Understood. Bian Xiaoya was secretly surprised by Yi Shiwen's willpower. She regarded the Demon Era as a huge threat, but Yi Shiwen regarded the Demon Era as a whetstone, especially as a whetstone for himself. The two of them were standing at different heights, so naturally, the things they saw were completely different. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Next time you encounter this kind of situation, you have to be careful. Yi Shiwen said, "Disciple understands." Bian Xiaoya said quickly, "Disciple has made master worry. All right, this time we go back and cultivate well. Strive to cultivate to the heavenly master realm as soon as possible. When that time comes, you will be able to help me." Yi Shiwen said. Bian Xiaoya was shocked. She didn't expect Yi Shiwen to have such high hopes for her. A tribe with a heavenly master overseeing, it was already a super strong tribe. Yi Shiwen hoped that she could also become a heavenly master. What kind of hope was this? For a newcomer like her who had just entered the Sovereign Emperor realm, it was unknown when she would be able to cultivate to the peak Sovereign Emperor realm, let alone the heavenly venerate realm. Hence, she could only treat these words as a form of encouragement. Disciple understands. Yi Shiwen brought Bian Xiaoya back to the satellite city where the Wood Emperor was. After he killed the light holy venerable, the storm formed by Mr. Ge and the Yin-Yang Harmony Emperor had finally spread out. The news spread almost at lightning speed to the 9 great divine cities, which are the core of the entire era battlefield. For a time, the 9 great divine cities were shocked. Chapter 3480. The 9 great divine cities were shaken. The original conflict between Yi Shiwen and the Moon City Lord was just a rumor circulating between extreme powerhouses like heavenly venerables and emperors. Ordinary people simply didn't know about it and weren't qualified to know about it. But now, with Yi Shiwen's killing of Yin Yang and Integration Emperor, this conflict finally erupted and was completely exposed to the world. For ordinary people, the conflict between the two camps and the grudges between heavenly venerables might only be a topic of conversation after a meal. However, to those extreme grade powerhouses, it was a huge blow. The fact that the Moon City Lord doted on his only son was already a well-known fact. Yi Shiwen's killing of Yin Yang and Integration Emperor had probably touched the Moon City Lord's reverse scale. Given his character, he would definitely kill Yi Shiwen for revenge. As such, the conflict between the two camps seemed inevitable. Although the Moon City was breached and the strength of the Moon City Lord was greatly damaged, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It could still be said to be one of the top forces in the entire fortune god dynasty. Although it could only be ranked at the bottom, it was still not something ordinary people could compare to. Now that the Middle Heavenly Venerate election was about to take place, the situation became even more complicated and confusing. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate had already offended such a behemoth before ascending to the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. In the eyes of many people, this was an extremely unfavorable situation for him. And this competition for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate was related to the next battle against the Moon City. Hence, many people felt that the possibility of conquering the Moon City was extremely pessimistic. Their opponent was the incomparably powerful Ancient Era, and they had managed to create a gap in the Fortune Divine Dynasty's defense. At the same time, the Fortune Divine Dynasty's internal strife had escalated to the point where they had to fight to the death. Under such circumstances, how could they defeat the Ancient Era's army that had invaded Moon City? Even though they knew that the Ancient Eras held many grudges against each other, and it was impossible for them to truly work together. Even so, the current situation made them extremely pessimistic. As the matter gradually spread, everyone also knew why Yi Shiwen was furious and even killed Yin Yang, an Integration Emperor. It turned out that Yin Yang, an Integration Emperor, had kidnapped Yi Shiwen's first disciple in the Fortune God Dynasty, Moon Empress. He actually wanted to refine Moon Empress into a cultivation furnace for him. Such behavior was simply audacious. Moon Empress was not an ordinary woman, but an extreme powerhouse. Although she was only an emperor, she was already above countless living beings. Celestial venerables were fine, but many sovereign emperors felt the same way. They were extremely angry because the Yin Yang Emperor and the Integration Emperor did not have the self-esteem of an extreme powerhouse at all. They actually did such a thing. Even if they did not have any friendship with the Moon Sovereign, they could not help but feel sad for the loss of the rabbit. Therefore, although the Celestial Venerables had different opinions about Yi Shiwen's behavior, the emperors had been praising Yi Shiwen's behavior. It was only because the Moon City Lord was still present that they didn't dare to really praise him. This was because what Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor had done had already caused them to feel the pain. This was especially so for the female emperors. They felt as though there was a dagger piercing their backs. The Moon Empress was backed by Yi Shiwen. Even the Yin Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor dared to make a move on her. Not to mention, they were extremely strong powerhouses without any background. If they were not careful, they could be captured by the Yin Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor at any time. In fact, the City Lord of Moon City might even personally kidnap them for his son to cultivate. Naturally, they all applauded. However, even though they were all extreme Dao powerhouses, the power of Emperor Lords was really too weak in front of Heavenly Venerates. They had always been optimistic that they wouldn't be able to affect the will of Heavenly Venerates. There was still a mixture of praise and criticism. In fact, a whirlwind had unknowingly formed in the dark. That was the trend of severely punishing Yi Shiwen. He was referring to Yi Shiwen destroying the internal stability of the Fortune God Dynasty, especially at this most critical juncture. At this time, the Moon City had fallen. Although it wasn't a critical juncture, it was already an extremely dangerous thing that had never happened since ancient times. At this juncture, Yi Shiwen had killed Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor and provoked conflict between the two camps. At that time, the ones who would benefit would only be those ancient eras. Therefore, in order to appease the anger of the Moon City Lord and the many powerhouses in the Moon City camp, Yi Shiwen should be sacrificed. No one knew when this trend had started, but it was getting more and more intense. It gradually spread among the various extreme Dao powerhouses. Even those below the extreme Dao powerhouses began to gradually spread it. It seemed to want to form a terrifying public opinion to force Yi Shiwen to submit. The selfishness of human nature was vividly reflected at this time. Although most people knew the reason why Yi Shiwen killed Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor, they also hated spoiled brats like Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor. However, as the rumors said, Once Moon City was breached and occupied for a long time, there would inevitably be a continuous flow of top experts from the ancient eras. It would also pose a huge threat to the other divine cities, not to mention the people living in the satellite cities. No place was safe. At this time, the hatred for the spoiled brats was more important than their own lives. Under the guidance of this public opinion, such words could be heard almost everywhere. Wu Zun should be the one to apologize. He provoked a confrontation between the two camps. If the ancient eras gain a foothold, he will be the center of the entire fortune god dynasty. Although I know the fault lies with Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor, for the sake of the overall situation, Wu Zun should pay the price. Let the Moon City Lord deal with Wu Zun. Moon City can't be lost. As a heavenly venerate, he should pay the price to protect the fortune god dynasty. This frenzy of public opinion became more and more intense, and it began to affect the extreme powerhouses. Although many emperor lords were still applauding Yi Shiwen, at this time, many people began to feel that this statement was not unreasonable. Compared to the overall situation of Moon City, Yi Shiwen's personal gains and losses were nothing. In any case, it was better for others to die than for him. Not long after, this frenzy finally spread among the heavenly venerates. Even many heavenly venerates were secretly discussing whether to ask Yi Shiwen to apologize. For the sake of the overall situation, his sacrifice was worth it. Even heavenly venerates were involved. This undoubtedly put Yi Shiwen in the eye of the storm. There seemed to be countless mouths asking him to sacrifice for the sake of the overall situation. And when this frenzy swept through the heavenly venerates, Yi Shiwen, who was in the eye of the storm, was in the eye of the storm at the Eastern Heavenly Venerates' residence in Sun City. In a paradise, the two sat opposite each other on two cloud beds. In the middle of the two cloud beds, a tea table separated the two of them. There were 2 cups of immortal tea on the table that were steaming hot. Yi Shiwen picked up the cup of immortal tea in front of him and took a sip. He felt his whole body relax, and all the pores on his body opened up. Even for his heavenly venerate body that was already extremely perfect, it had the effect of washing the muscles and marrow. Ordinary emperor lords would have a great improvement in their cultivation after taking a sip. Good tea. Yi Shiwen put down the teacup and couldn't help but say, I have to say, this is the best tea I have ever drunk. Eastern Heavenly Venerate really hid a lot of good stuff. Ha ha. Actually, there isn't much left. Eastern Heavenly Venerate said, I was just lucky enough to get some tea leaves left behind by the ancestral tea tree. There isn't much left. It's only for entertaining distinguished guests. Is the ancestral tea tree the first tea tree in the world? Yi Shiwen asked. It's the first tea tree born in this era. It's just that it's rare to see it usually. Even heavenly venerates like us can't calculate its whereabouts. It only appears at some specific times. After shedding mature tea leaves, it leaves on its own. Therefore, every tea leaf is very precious. For us heavenly venerates, drinking it for a long time can wash the muscles and marrow, said Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Such a precious ancestral tea tree. Isn't there anyone who wants to snatch it? Asked Yi Shiwen. Of course there is, but it's useless. This ancestral tea tree was born at the beginning of the world. Although it hasn't been cultivated, it has also developed a part of spiritual wisdom. With the profound spiritual power that it has accumulated over the years, it can even compete with the top heavenly venerates. If it wants to leave, who can stop it? Eastern Heavenly Venerate shook his head and said with a smile. Yi Shiwen looked at Eastern Heavenly Venerate. He already understood that Eastern Heavenly Venerate must have had designs on the ancestral tea tree in the past. However, he obviously failed in the end. Throughout history, only the Lord of Fate Heaven has truly subdued this ancestral tea tree. There are records in the ancient books of the Fortune God dynasty. In the past, the Lord of Fate Heaven had subdued the myriad world. His style was peerless, and the ancestral tea tree took the initiative to submit to him. Most of the tea leaves of the ancestral tea tree in the Fortune God dynasty were obtained during that period of time. Later, the Lord of Fate Heaven disappeared. The ancestral tea tree also disappeared with him. No one knows whether it is still with the Lord of Fate Heaven or whether it has escaped into the boundless chaos. No one has seen this ancestral tea tree since then, said Eastern Heavenly Venerate. A look of envy flashed in his eyes. However, he wasn't unconvinced. If there was someone who could truly subdue the ancestral tea tree since ancient times, it was only the peerless Lord of Fate Heaven who was still the world's #1 expert. The Lord of Fate Heaven was peerless. It's a pity that I didn't get to see him. It's a pity to this day. Yishuin couldn't help but say with emotion, "Forget it. As long as he doesn't die, we will meet sooner or later in the future. I came to visit Taoism friend Eastern Heavenly Venerate today. I think Taoism friend has already heard of the recent storm. I don't know Taoism friend. What do you think?" Chapter 3481. What do you think? Yishuin's eyes were as gentle as water, and he asked indifferently. The Eastern deity Venerable naturally knew what Yishuin was talking about when he said that the storm was getting more and more intense. This wave swept through the Empyreans and swept through the 10 great god cities. During this period of time, unless one was in closed-door training, how could they not have heard of it? It's just that some people are adding fuel to the fire. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate lifted his teacup and took a sip before speaking unhurriedly. Fellow Taoist is wise and far-sighted, so you should understand. There's no need to bother with him. You want a heavenly exalt to pay for a monarch's life? The corners of the Eastern Heavenly Sovereign's mouth curled up into a sneer. What a joke! In the eyes of a veteran Holy Venerate like Eastern Venerate, who had been in the Heavenly Venerate realm for countless years, a Holy Venerate was a Holy Venerate, and an emperor was an emperor. There was a clear distinction. They were all extreme powerhouses, but their statuses were different. Not to mention, this time it was Yin Yang and the Fusion Emperor who did something wrong. They dared to provoke a Holy Venerate. It was reasonable for them to end up like this. It was just karma. At this time, there was a Holy Venerate asking Yishuin to consider the overall situation. It was ridiculous. What was the overall situation? The most fundamental interests of Holy Venerates were the overall situation. If even Holy Venerates like them were in a mess, then they would not care about the overall situation. This voice did not only come from the Silver Moon City camp. There were also some other Holy Venerates involved. Eastern Venerate naturally understood their purpose. At this juncture of the Middle Heavenly Venerate selection, they wanted to cut off one of his arms. After Yishuin heard Eastern Venerate's words, he already understood. Eastern Venerate was clear about these things, just like him. No one was a fool. Who else could it be other than the City Lord of Moon City, who was behind this so-called frenzy of public opinion that had suddenly appeared? In addition to the Moon City Lord, other Holy Venerates who were interested in the Middle Heavenly Venerate position were also adding fuel to the fire. Although he did not know how many there were, it did not matter. This matter wasn't just a personal grudge between Yishuin and the Moon City Lord. It also involved the competition for the position of Middle Heavenly Master. The City Lord of Moon City had definitely lost the possibility of competing for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. However, the power he possessed couldn't be underestimated. Whoever he supported would be like a tiger that had grown wings. That person's strength would increase greatly, and the possibility of obtaining the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate would increase greatly. Those people probably had big plans to sell themselves to the City Lord of Moon City. Just a bunch of clowns. They want to rely on this kind of method to seize the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. They are really dreaming. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate sneered. His expression was extremely confident. He was 90% certain that he would obtain the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. Of course, he also knew that those who could compete with him were not simple. Naturally, he would not place all his hopes on the City Lord of Moon City. However, the more advantages he had, the better. It's just that they have obviously miscalculated. The City Lord of Moon City will definitely be eliminated in this competition for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. He won't even have the right to speak. Yishuin said faintly. A look of astonishment finally flashed across the Eastern Heavenly Venerate's face. He was only convinced that the City Lord of Moon City wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. However, Yishuin was actually confident that the City Lord of Moon City wouldn't even have the right to speak. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate glanced at Yishuin. Only then did Yishuin realize that the City Lord of Moon City had been besieged by several great demon lords. This time, he had killed the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Fusion Emperor. The entanglement between the City Lord of Moon City and the Demon Path era was too deep. Although this evidence wasn't enough to put him to death, and the entire Fortune God dynasty was determined to eradicate him, it was enough to eliminate the City Lord of Moon City from the crucial competition for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. He wouldn't have the right to speak. This was undoubtedly great news for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Although he didn't care about the City Lord of Moon City's strength, reducing the opponent's chances of success would naturally increase his chances of winning. Good, well done. With the Eastern Heavenly Venerate's temperament, he couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. With the news you brought, the City Lord of Moon City is no longer a concern. I don't need to worry about him, but he's strangely abnormal this time. I've killed his beloved son, but with his temperament, he's actually able to endure it. He didn't come to kill me immediately. Instead, he chose this extremely troublesome roundabout method. This in itself is very strange. Yishuin picked up the immortal tea and took a sip. His whole body felt extremely comfortable, and his thoughts were clear. He wants to force me to death with this kind of frenzy of public opinion? How is that possible? He can't be so naive. He must have a backup plan. During this time, Yishuin had been guarding against the City Lord of Moon City's counterattack. The City Lord was a terrifying character who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Although Yishuin believed that he had a way to protect himself, he could not take it seriously. However, it had always been calm and tranquil. This seemed strange. Yes, everything was calm and tranquil in Yishuin's eyes. The so-called frenzy of public opinion was just a joke. In the face of absolute strength, such conspiracies and tricks were just a ridiculous joke. Logically speaking, the City Lord of Moon City shouldn't be so muddle-headed that he didn't understand, so it was even more strange. There must be a conspiracy behind all this. There must be a backup plan, but what kind of backup plan? It doesn't matter. No matter what methods he has, it's useless. This time, he will definitely be eliminated. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate just smiled without saying anything. No matter what methods the City Lord of Moon City had, he was confident that he could suppress him. Coupled with the information in Yishuin's hands, it was enough for the Eastern Heavenly Venerate to pay the price. The information in Yishuin's hands was probably something that even the City Lord of Moon City didn't know. Yishuin knew that the demon lords were related to the City Lord of Moon City from Senior Heavenly Talisman Immortal. As for the existence of Mr. Ghost, he probably didn't know anything about the City Lord of Moon City. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed Mr. Ghost to approach his son. He wasn't stupid. Coming into contact with the people of the Devil Era was already a huge crime. Not to mention the fact that the people of the Devil Era left him alone and went to contact his son. There must be a problem. No matter how stupid he was, he understood that his son was his reverse scale. He absolutely couldn't allow anyone to touch him. Therefore, Yishuin was sure that the City Lord didn't know anything. Otherwise, Mr. Ghost would have been killed long ago. Would he have dared to incite the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Integration Emperor to kidnap Bien Xiaoye? A person like the City Lord of Moon City is a tumor of the Fortune God dynasty. This time, because he spoiled his son, it led to the fall of Moon City. This is already an irreparable crime. If not for the fact that I still have a use for him now, I would have eliminated him long ago. However, when I become a Middle Heavenly Venerate, I will definitely find a way to eliminate him, said the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. In the eyes of people like the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, the City Lord of Moon City had changed from being the protector of the Fortune God dynasty to a tumor. He had repeatedly indulged his son, which eventually led to an irreparable mistake. After that, he still dared to cause trouble for them. His arrogant and despotic behavior finally angered the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. However, the City Lord of Moon City was domineering and powerful. He also had many years of connections. If Yishiwen wanted to eliminate him, he couldn't beat the grass and startle the snake. He could either kill him in one strike or lay dormant. He couldn't act rashly. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. When Yishiwen saw that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate had revealed such a secret, he naturally understood that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate was expressing goodwill. The best way to build a relationship with someone was to share secrets. At the same time, they naturally shared a common enemy on this issue. As long as the City Lord of Moon City wasn't eliminated, Yishiwen wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. That's right, I have another piece of news for you. The satellite city where the Yin-Yang Emperor and the Integration Emperor were hiding has been destroyed, said the Eastern Heavenly Venerate slowly. I also just received this news. This is really the style of the City Lord of Moon City. However, how dare he do this? He destroyed a satellite city. Does he really think that he is invincible in the world? I'm afraid that there are many people who want to cause trouble for him. Yishiwen immediately judged that the City Lord of Moon City must have vented his anger on the people in the satellite city and slaughtered them all. However, Yishiwen didn't understand how he dared to be so bold. He didn't do it himself. It was a master from the ancient era who did it. Who knows how many backups he has buried in many ancient eras over the years. How many connections he has. Destroying a mere satellite city is enough to catch us off guard. A disdainful sneer flashed across the Eastern Heavenly Venerate's face. Yishiwen immediately understood and said, "He is demonstrating to everyone." He didn't choose to delay his attack. Instead, he chose to attack immediately. He didn't hesitate, even if he had to expose some of his connections from the ancient era. When being cruel and merciless becomes a deterrent and a trademark, it actually shows that the situation he is facing now is not good. The more injured a beast is, the more it has to show its crazy side, said the Eastern Heavenly Venerate slowly. After Yishiwen connected the dots, he immediately understood. As the guardian of Moon City, the City Lord of Moon City naturally had to bear a lot of responsibility for the loss of Moon City. Not to mention that the loss of Moon City was because of his son. How could the powerhouses in his camp not have resentment? However, they didn't dare to say anything because of his strength. However, when this kind of resentment accumulated deeper and deeper, it would inevitably become a time bomb that would explode at any time. Therefore, after losing Moon City, the situation of the City Lord of Moon City became even more perverse. He was tyrannical and cruel. He slaughtered people at every turn. Those who didn't know would think that this was his nature. He didn't repent. He still acted in his own way even after committing such a big mistake. Those who knew understood that he was using tyrannical means to cover up his weakness. This was to deter outsiders and also to deter the dissidents within his camp. Therefore, the Eastern Heavenly Venerate said that the City Lord of Moon City was nothing to worry about. Bluff. Chapter 3482. In the eyes of the East Empyrean, the City Lord of Moon City was indeed bluffing. So what if he jumped around? First of all, the East Empyrean wasn't afraid of him. Secondly, he held the great merit of destroying the Seventh Gold Era. This was his greatest source of confidence. However, Yishiwen could not ignore the Moon City Lord. Even a skinny camel was bigger than a horse. The key was that his strength could pose the most fatal threat to Yishiwen. In the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks were useless. Yishiwen was also capable of doing so. After all, he was inferior to the Moon City Lord in terms of absolute strength. Although he had the backing of the Eastern Heavenly Venerable, he had never had the habit of placing his hopes on others. He had to grasp his own fate in his own hands. If this was not the case, then Yishiwen would have died a long time ago, and no one would have known about it. However, The gap in strength between him and the city lord of the Moon City was very obvious. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen decided that he must refine the seventh metal ancestral qi as soon as possible so that his gilded tyrant form could reach a higher level. At that time, just by relying on his physical body, he would be able to compete with a top master of the fifth realm and not be at a disadvantage. Moreover, he currently lacked an Empyrean Tao artifact that he could use, so he could not ignore this. Although he still lacked some divine materials, it was impossible for him to directly upgrade the Martial Emperor Seal to the level of a Heavenly Venerate Tao artifact. However, things are different now. He had a large amount of Virtue Qi in his hands, which was enough to upgrade the Martial Emperor Seal to the Martial Venerate Seal and become a top-notch Heavenly Venerate Tao artifact. Although he already had more than one Heavenly Venerate Tao artifact, if he had the help of the Martial Supreme Seal, his combat power would increase by more than a little. Not only would he be able to contend with a Fifth Realm expert, but he would also be able to defeat an ordinary Fifth Realm Heavenly Venerate expert. An ordinary Empyrean Tao artifact was completely different from an Empyrean Tao artifact refined from the Qi of Merit. They couldn't be compared. At that time, even if Yi Shiwen's strength was temporarily unable to break through to the Fifth Realm, his fighting strength would not be inferior to that of a Fifth Realm Heavenly Master. I've also contacted many people during this time. In 1 month, we will reconvene the Empyrean meeting to select a Middle Empyrean. The Eastern Venerate finished his tea and said, "This time, I will settle everything. 1 month, I understand. For the next month, I will go into seclusion." Yi Shiwen said, whether it was refining the seventh metal ancestral qi or upgrading the Martial Emperor Seal to the revered Martial Emperor Seal, it would take a lot of time. It was no exception even if the Qi of Merit was taken into account. He couldn't be that strong. He could only choose to completely refine the seventh metal ancestral qi into the immortal body first. Then, he would almost be in an invincible position. Yi Shiwen drank the immortal tea in 1 gulp. Then, he stood up and strode out of the palace of the Eastern deity Venerable. Everything was enough after he had obtained what he wanted. Yi Shiwen returned to the human race's encampment. He immediately summoned Bian Xiaoya, the human emperor, and the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor. He then announced that he was going to undergo closed-door training. The human race army wouldn't come out of their encampment for the next month. They wouldn't be allowed to go out of the encampment's gate no matter what happened outside. This was because Yi Shiwen knew that many forces and many pairs of eyes were staring at the human race. Once he went out of the encampment's gate, it was very likely that he would be caught by others. The Moon City Lord would use this opportunity to launch an attack. He didn't know what kind of conspiracy was brewing behind the Moon City Lord. Therefore, the safest way was to improve his own strength. In the place of seclusion, Yi Shiwen opened up an independent space. In a huge valley, he sat cross-legged. In front of him was the seventh metal ancestral qi. This seventh metal ancestral qi was extremely tyrannical. It swayed uneasily and constantly emitted endless seventh metal qi. This seventh metal ancestral qi could easily evolve into a seventh metal world. However, at this moment, this strand of Gungjin ancestral qi was bound by countless divine chains of law. The 5-star laws manifested and entangled together, forming a divine chain of law that directly bound this strand of Gungjin ancestral qi. It was unable to move and could only keep buzzing. Even now, Yi Shiwen couldn't completely subdue the seventh metal ancestral qi. He could only forcefully suppress it. Originally, it would take a long time to refine it. However, with the help of the Qi of Merit, not only could it make the seventh metal ancestral qi more wondrous, but could also greatly increase the speed of refining. The Qi of Merit was the merit of heaven. It was equivalent to the heavenly Tao helping to refine it. How could the speed not be fast? Yi Shiwen inhaled this seventh metal ancestral qi into his body. He immediately felt like his body was about to explode. The 5% of the Qi of Merit in his body quickly started to dissolve. Yi Shiwen immediately felt like the speed at which he refined the seventh metal ancestral qi in his body was about to fly. It was like he was in fast-forward mode. In the process of refining the seventh metal ancestral qi, Yi Shiwen's understanding of the laws of seventh metal also increased. Although they were laws of different epochs, the more Yi Shiwen understood them, the more similar their core points were. It was just that the laws of metal in the martial epoch changed according to the environment of the martial epoch, so they weren't exactly the same. However, as the saying goes, stones from other mountains can be used to improve jades. Just the process of fusion was enough to make his comprehension of the law of Gungjin become one of the top 3,000 martial arts principles. Yi Shiwen's comprehension of the law of Gungjin was enough to make it one of the top 3 martial arts principles. Every time Yi Shiwen comprehended a law to an extremely high level, his strength would also improve. Moreover, with the refinement of the seventh metal ancestral qi, the strength of his physical body would also become stronger. It even faintly revealed the golden light of merit. Although it wasn't a body of merit, the process of refining the seventh metal ancestral qi also integrated about 5% of the qi of merit. Therefore, it would also show some strange and magical effects of the body of merit. For example, killing people wouldn't cause any karma. At least, this was true before his qi of merit was exhausted. The more seventh metal ancestral qi he refined, the more vigorous the qi of merit in his body would be. Refining it into his body like this would naturally only bring benefits and no harm. It wasn't like other things which would only become hidden dangers if they were randomly smelted. With the gradual passage of time, Yi Shiwen refined more and more seventh metal ancestral qi. His own strength also became stronger and stronger. Yi Shiwen felt that he was gradually breaking through a limit. Originally, after he swallowed the world tree fruit, he had already reached a realm that no one had ever reached before. In the fourth realm, it was almost impossible to meet an opponent. However, he still couldn't break through to the fifth realm. It was like there was a powerful barrier that was suppressing Yi Shiwen, making it impossible for him to break through to the fifth realm. There was already a huge gap between the fifth realm and the fourth realm celestial master. The increase of several times was not something that the fourth realm celestial master could imagine. There were 9 realms of celestial master. The gap between each realm was huge. With Yi Shiwen's foundation and fortuitous encounters, he was only close to this realm. He couldn't go any further. But now, with the passage of time, he swallowed more and more seventh metal ancestral qi. He actually felt that he was breaking through the barrier that he originally couldn't break through. He had reached a level that no one had ever reached before or since. If he could successfully break through, it would shake the entire celestial master world. Since ancient times, no one had been able to do it. However, Yi Shiwen had done it. If this wasn't a miracle, then what was? And Yi Shiwen was now gradually approaching this miracle and creating this miracle. This process was extremely painful. It wasn't easy to break through to the fifth realm in terms of combat strength and be comparable to the top experts of the fifth realm. Every minute and every second was frantically improving his understanding of the seventh metal era. Only in this way could he refine the seventh metal ancestral qi further. Finally, after an unknown amount of time, the bottleneck of combat strength was finally broken through under the continuous sacrificial practice of seventh metal ancestral qi. Boom! All of a sudden, Yi Shiwen completely integrated all the seventh metal ancestral qi into his gilded tyrant form. He could sense that his combat strength had steadily stepped into the fifth realm. This was because his physical body had the most essential breakthrough under such circumstances. Therefore, he could improve his combat strength under the circumstances that his realm and skills hadn't improved. The fifth realm and the fourth realm are really different. There's a huge difference. If I were to fight Holy Lord Light again now, he wouldn't even be able to take one move from me. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists. He could feel the powerful strength in his body at this time. The feeling of being able to tear the sky with his bare hands came back again. That was because the strength of his physical body had greatly improved in a short period of time. It couldn't be said to be an illusion, because now he could indeed tear the sky easily, even if it was a master of the fifth realm. Unless he was at the peak of the fifth realm, it would be impossible to defeat him. Even after practicing the martial Zune seal, he wouldn't be afraid of the top masters at the peak of the fifth realm. He could feel that he was unprecedentedly powerful. This time's enlightenment was also a good thing for him. He could already feel that the fifth realm was already in front of him. Once he broke through, his combat strength would be enough to be invincible in this realm. No one would be his opponent. However, just as Ishiwen was about to forcibly upgrade the Martial Emperor Seal to the Martial Zune Seal with 20% of the Chi of Merit, suddenly, a burst of bell sounds came into the place where he was doing closed-door training. However, these bursts of bell sounds couldn't be heard by everyone. To be precise, only the Celestial Masters could hear it. Others couldn't even feel it. It was the notice of the Celestial Masters meeting. Yi Shiwen pinched his fingers and counted. He had been in closed-door training for more than a month. Finally, it was time for the showdown. Chapter 3483. This bell represented the beginning of the Heavenly Venerables Convention. Because only Heavenly Venerables could hear it, it was extremely mysterious. Yi Shiwen could only temporarily postpone his plan to upgrade the Martial Emperor Seal to the Martial Master Seal. He immediately flew out. Bian Xiaoya and the others, who were guarding him outside, quickly came forward to greet him. Now, the Middle Heavenly Venerables Convention has begun. Follow me to take a look, Yi Shiwen said. Bian Xiaoya and the others also showed a bit of excitement on their faces. Even if they were all extreme Daos, under normal circumstances, it was normal to not see a Heavenly Venerables for hundreds of millions of years. After all, they were not in the same circle. Of course, if it was a special period, or if there was someone like Yi Shiwen leading, the situation would be different. Not to mention the Middle Heavenly Venerables Convention. This was a situation that rarely happened in countless years. Middle Heavenly Venerables had a distinguished status in the Fortune God dynasty. They were equivalent to the Deputy Emperor. They might not be elected even once in countless years. This time, if it wasn't for the Moon City being captured and the deterrence of the heavens-splitting demonic acts, they probably wouldn't have chosen to elect a Middle Heavenly Venerables so easily. After such a long period of promotion, even the Emperors were familiar with it. They naturally understood how rare this convention was. Even if they were just spectators, it was a supreme honor and a kind of qualification. But Master, I heard that the Moon City Lord plans to deal with you during the Heavenly Venerables Convention, Bian Xiaoya quickly reminded. During the month that Yi Shiwen was in seclusion, the frenzy of public opinion did not weaken. On the contrary, it became more and more intense, as if it was a stormy sea that wanted to drown Yi Shiwen. Moreover, it gradually spread to the human race's encampment. There were even many self-proclaimed righteous people who came to the human race's encampment to provoke him. They dared to provoke a Heavenly Venerables. They were really ignorant and fearless. It was just that they were pawns being used by others. They didn't know how sad they were. A Heavenly Venerable's wrath was enough to make them all die without a burial place. They wouldn't even have the chance to reincarnate. It was just that Yi Shiwen was too lazy to bother with them. Bian Xiaoya also obeyed Yi Shiwen's order. She didn't come out of closed-door training for more than a month. She remained unmoved, no matter how arrogant and provocative those people were. However, some rumors also fell into their ears. There were more and more rumors about the Moon City Lord attacking Yi Shiwen at the Celestial Honors Convention. Some of them even described it vividly, as if they really knew about it. Bian Xiaoya was extremely worried about Yi Shiwen because she knew how powerful the Moon City Lord was. Yi Shiwen faintly smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. This time, even he won't be able to cause any trouble." Seeing that Yi Shiwen was so confident and had a well-thought-out appearance, Bian Xiaoya was slightly relieved. In her opinion, Yi Shiwen must have some kind of assurance, otherwise he wouldn't be like this. The few of them followed Yi Shiwen to the palace of the Celestial Honors Convention in the depths of Sun City. At this time, the Celestial Honors who received the summons also dared to come. However, like Yi Shiwen, they also brought their Emperor Lords over. In the entire venue, the innermost area was filled with powerful Celestial Honors, while the surrounding areas were occupied by the Emperor Lords. Even with their powerful status in their respective domains and places, they could only stand on the periphery in this kind of conference. The entire palace where the venue was located was like a starry sky. The towering thrones were like bright stars in the starry sky, blooming with radiance in the starry sky. Looking from afar, the entire venue was flowing with brilliance and overflowing essence, making the place seem full of strong vitality. Endless clouds lingered at the bottom of the venue, converging into one cloud map after another. It looked extremely spectacular and magnificent. The venue was like a dazzling and magnificent jewel embedded in the entire Sun City. As they got closer, they could feel the Ling Qi blowing on their faces. Yi Shiwen was fine, but Bian Xiaoya and the others only felt comfortable all over their bodies, as if their meridians and marrows were being cleansed. The Ling Qi had really reached a shocking level, but it didn't liquefy or even solidify, which was very mysterious. Bian Xiaoya and the others suddenly became well-behaved after sensing the aura of the powerful celestial honors present. In such an occasion, they didn't dare to say anything. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen asked Bian Xiaoya and the others to wait in the Emperor Lord's area. When he was about to go over and meet with Eastern Heavenly Venerate and the others, a figure blocked in front of him. Yi Shiwen frowned and couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" There were so many Heavenly Venerates in the Fortune God dynasty. Even Yi Shiwen didn't know all of them. In fact, he only knew a small portion of them. He didn't have much interaction with most of them. This figure seemed to be a child who was only about 10 years old. However, when this child stood still, it was as if a mountain was standing still, giving off an extremely terrifying sense of oppression. You don't have to care about who I am. I just want to ask you, have you heard what everyone has been talking about recently? The child stared at Yi Shiwen and said, "So what if I have heard it?" "No. So what if I haven't heard it?" Yi Shiwen's expression also began to turn cold. He already understood that this child had come with ill intentions. "If you haven't heard it, then I will tell you now. If you have heard it, then make a choice. It's not that I want you to consider the overall situation, but everyone wants you to consider the overall situation. You killed Yin Yang and the Integration Emperor at this critical juncture. Are you trying to cause internal strife in the Fortune God dynasty?" The child's voice was crisp, but his words were incomparably vicious. He silently put the blame on Yi Shiwen for stirring up internal strife in the Fortune God dynasty. A cold light flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes. He sneered and said, "You want to meddle in my affairs? Consider the overall situation. How dare you? A child who hasn't grown up speaks so rudely." "What did you say?" The child's face suddenly revealed a somewhat ferocious expression. He no longer had the slightest expression that a child should have. He hated it the most when people mentioned this topic. Because he had made a mistake in his cultivation in his early years, he could only look like this for the rest of his life. He had truly injured his foundation. Otherwise, when he stepped into the Heavenly Venerate realm, his physical body was close to perfection. No matter what kind of injuries or innate defects he had, he could automatically recover. He could even grow as he pleased and look as he pleased. But he couldn't, so this became a pain in his heart. Although he could transform into the appearance of a burly man normally, he couldn't do so here. There were so many Heavenly Venerates present. He wouldn't have a pair of heavenly eyes. He would be seen through in minutes, and instead, he would become a laughing stock. Because he was just in the appearance of a child, it didn't matter. Heavenly Venerates came in all shapes and sizes, and a child was nothing at all. It was just that he couldn't accept that he would always look like a child. I say, a child who hasn't even grown his hair, yet dares to get involved in this matter. Hee, I don't know who instigated you to do this, but I can tell you clearly that you can't afford to get involved in this matter. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back, as if he didn't care about the Heavenly Venerate who looked like a child in front of him. At this time, The confrontation between the two had attracted the attention of all the heavenly venerates. Many people's eyes flashed with divine light because they were also very clear about what the child said. Some of them even added fuel to the fire, but they didn't expect Yishuan to be so disrespectful and directly say that the child couldn't afford to get involved. This child heard Yishuan call him a child again and again, and he was furious in his heart. He didn't say a word and directly attacked. Buzz! There was the sound of metal clanging, and a bronze sword appeared in his hand. This sword was engraved with endless talismans, and there was a glow flowing on it, showing that it was of an extraordinary grade. The bronze sword slashed down almost instantaneously with the force of a lightning bolt. It directly slashed towards Yishuan's head, as if it wanted to split him in half on the spot. His speed was extremely fast, and, at the same time, his momentum was heavy. He was too fast, and the lost storm that had just been generated was forcibly suppressed by him. This was the venue of the Heavenly Venerate Convention. The consequences of being presumptuous here were simply unimaginable. Yishuan sneered slightly. He saw that the sword was about to slash down on the spot, and when it was about to split his head in half, he finally made his move. He didn't make any unnecessary movements, and he didn't release any law or spiritual power. He just simply slapped it with his palm. Clang! They only heard a loud sound of metal colliding with each other. Everyone only saw a burst of sparks flying in all directions. That incomparably huge bronze greatsword, which was as tall as 2 adult men, was actually blocked by Yishuan's palm. There was not even the slightest bit of difficulty. Many people only felt their pupils shrink slightly when they saw this scene. Such a collision was naturally ordinary in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of these people, they could see how powerful it was. Although the child didn't look tall, he was also a well-known existence among the many heavenly venerates. His great sword had slain many powerful enemies and even killed a few heavenly venerates of the ancient epic. It was an extremely impressive weapon. He wasn't someone easy to deal with, but his angry attack was actually blocked by Yishuan casually. Moreover, Yishuan had blocked it with his bare hands. This in itself was a very shocking thing. The physical body of a heavenly venerate was indeed very powerful and perfect, but it was not very possible to casually resist a heavenly venerate Taoist weapon with bare hands. It was only possible if it was an extremely tyrannical physique cultivator who cultivated the physical body like a Taoist weapon. Could it be that he was a physique cultivator? Chapter 3484. Pure physique cultivators were also quite rare among celestial masters. This was because celestial masters cultivated the nomological laws. The comprehension of realms was more important than anything else. Physique cultivators focused on their own physical bodies and used their physical bodies to reach the other shore of the Great Way. Because it was rare, it was strange. The strength of physique cultivators was naturally unquestionable. Powerful physique cultivators could even resist heaven's retribution with their physical bodies and resist celestial master Tao artifacts. It was very terrifying. Moreover, the combat power of a body-cultivating heavenly venerates was considered very strong. This was because not every heavenly venerate was good at fighting. Every heavenly venerate cultivated a different great Tao. Some were good at fighting, while others weren't. Of course, the so-called good at fighting and not good at fighting among celestial masters were relative. Compared to many emperor lords, they were still very terrifying existences. They could easily resist celestial master Tao artifacts. Yishuan took the sword with his bare hands. Judging from the amazing physical cultivation that he displayed, he was probably a physique cultivator. Just being a pure physique cultivator was already very terrifying. If he was not, then it truly proved that Yishuan had reached a terrifying level. Among the people present, there were still many who knew some basic information about Yishuan. Judging from the past, he was not a physique cultivator. However, it was undeniable that his physical cultivation was indeed terrifying. The child couldn't help but reveal a horrified expression when he saw that Yishiwen had easily blocked his fatal blow. He had tried his best to restrain the fluctuations of the principles in this sword attack. It looked ordinary, but only fast, accurate, and ruthless. However, only he knew how terrifying this sword attack was. However, it was still caught by Yi Shiwen in an understated manner. How terrifying was this? Others might not know, but he was very clear. At this time, he suddenly felt a bit regretful. This was because when he took on this task previously, he didn't know that Yi Shiwen was so powerful. He was just a newly promoted celestial master who had barely broken through to the fourth realm. The word newly promoted was enough to explain everything. Every cultivation of a celestial master was built up over time. No matter how powerful a newly promoted celestial master was, how powerful could he be? But after exchanging blows, he realized that he was wrong. The person in front of him had an unfathomable cultivation base. Even if he was just a body cultivator, and his skills weren't that deep, he still wasn't someone to be trifled with. However, it was too late for him to retreat at this time. Yi Shiwen's figure was approaching. His figure was a little weak. He had never been a burly man, but he brought a great sense of oppression to the child. He was like a matchless Azura stepping on the corpses of all living beings. This vast, ocean-like vitality alarmed all the celestial masters. With such terrifying vitality, who would believe that Yi Shiwen wasn't a body cultivator? Even those who knew about Yi Shiwen's background couldn't help but be slightly shaken. Could it be that their previous judgment was wrong? Perhaps this was the true face of Yi Shiwen's cultivation. Everything that had happened before was merely a facade. After all, although body cultivators mainly cultivated their bodies and were incomparably tyrannical, it didn't mean that they didn't understand magical powers and didn't comprehend the Great Way. They just weren't as proficient as ordinary people. Yi Shiwen walked over step by step. Every step he took set off a turbulent vitality, but it was firmly restrained around him, not letting him erupt. His whole body was almost integrated with this hall. He was truly the unity of heaven and man. He was strong to the extreme. Almost at the moment when Yi Shiwen moved, the child began to retreat again and again. He only looked like a child, but in fact, he was also a blood sea Azura who had killed his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. God knew how many strong enemies he had killed with his bare hands. Naturally, his perception was very sharp. He reacted almost instantly and took a series of exquisite steps backward. This was an extremely impressive movement technique that could allow him to cross a world in an instant. But it was useless. Even if he retreated, Yi Shiwen still approached him in an instant. Yi Shiwen's steps were extremely clear. It seemed like he was walking very slowly. Everyone could see it clearly, but in fact his speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he pounced on the child. Everyone understood that this was a kind of footwork. It deceived the eyes and the brain, producing an effect that seemed slow but was actually fast. But in their hearts, they were even more shocked that they were still deceived even after opening the celestial eye. This kind of body technique was indeed extremely amazing. Yi Shiwen just clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and then blasted out a punch. Boom! In an instant, the universe exploded and golden light soared into the sky. Yi Shiwen's fist smashed everything, smashing everything into pieces. The child wanted to resist, but how could he do so? In everyone's ears was a huge roar. Yi Shiwen's fist blasted on the long sword in the hand of the child. The child was like a real child fighting with an adult. He was taught a lesson in an instant. His figure flew out directly. His feet were nailed to the void, but it was of no use at all. He couldn't stop at all. He could only use his feet to tear 2 huge cracks in the void. It was another simple exchange, a simple collision. However, the terrifying impact was reflected in the eyes of many heavenly venerates. Countless atoms were smashed to pieces. The terrifying power that erupted was controlled by the 2 of them. They didn't let it spread. Otherwise, the entire space the size of Sun City would be smashed to smithereens. So strong. Many celestial masters further felt the strength and horror of Yi Shiwen's physical body. Just this simple attack had already made them tremble in fear. The child's hands that were holding the sword were trembling. His entire body was trembling. At this time, everyone looked at the big sword that was taller than their body, but they didn't find it funny or funny at all. This child was indeed a powerhouse among the celestial masters, but he was still nothing in front of Yi Shiwen. However, before everyone could catch their breath, Yi Shiwen appeared in front of the child again. His big hand turned into a huge palm and slapped out. The child had already realized the fact that his strength was far inferior to Yi Shiwen's, but when he saw Yi Shiwen's big palm slapping over, he still felt shocked and angry. This was because Yi Shiwen simply didn't care about him at all. This was clearly a humiliation to him, but he couldn't dodge at all. When he wanted to dodge, he only felt that a terrifying force was holding him tightly, making it impossible for him to escape. Bang! The child was slapped on the spot. He spurted out a mouthful of old blood, and then his entire body spun rapidly like a top, slamming into the spear on the main hall. In just 2 attacks by Yi Shiwen, the child was forced into a corner, making it impossible for him to dodge. But the Celestial Masters present wouldn't think that this child would definitely not suffer such a big loss and be able to dodge if they were outside, because the difference in strength between them was too great. Some extremely powerful Celestial Masters had already seen that the child was clearly a top existence at the peak of the 4th realm. In the 4th realm, he might not be invincible, but he was considered a rare existence. As long as he spent some time, it was really not a problem to step into the 5th realm. But in the eyes of Yi Shiwen, who was in front of them, he was so vulnerable that he was almost instantly defeated. Many people couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. The strength that Yi Shiwen displayed was too little, but such a little bit was enough to crush this child at the peak of the 4th realm. So they couldn't judge what level Yi Shiwen had reached. Could it be that he had already stepped into the 5th realm? With the ability of a Celestial Master, it was still very easy to find out some information about Yi Shiwen. Even if some of them were not very familiar with Yi Shiwen, they had already learned a lot of information about Yi Shiwen in this short period of time through various means. According to the information, Yi Shiwen had been in the Fortune God dynasty for less than 20,000 years. More than 10,000 years ago, when Yi Shiwen appeared in the Fortune God dynasty, he was just a 4th realm emperor. Now, he could actually beat up a 4th realm celestial master at will. Over the past 10,000 years, his progress could be described as shocking. If one were to look at his strength alone, it might not seem like much. However, when combined with the fact that he had advanced from an emperor lord to a heavenly venerate in just 10,000 years, it was a completely different story. It was simply a miracle. Which celestial master didn't have a fortuitous encounter? However, none of them had such an outrageous encounter like Yi Shiwen's. In fact, many people even suspected that Yi Shiwen was another child of destiny. Could it be that Yi Shiwen was a person blessed by the heavens? After slapping the child, celestial master away, Yi Shiwen didn't chase after him. He just said faintly, "This is a small lesson for you. You're not even fully grown, yet you dare to meddle in other people's affairs. You're really courting death." Fortunately, this is the Celestial Master Convention. If it was another place, I would have beaten you to death. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth after receiving some benefits from others. That child Celestial Master had barely managed to catch his breath when he heard Yi Shiwen's words. He was anxious and angry at the same time. He was a Celestial Master. When had he been forced to this extent? Moreover, he had been ridiculed and looked down upon. Thinking of this, he instantly felt a sweetness in his throat, and a mouthful of old blood spurted out, splattering everywhere. He looked at Yi Shiwen with shock and anger in his eyes, but in the end, he didn't dare to make a move. He was afraid of being beaten. Yi Shiwen shifted his gaze away from the child Celestial Master, then looked around and said, "I know that many of you have received benefits and want to have some ideas that you shouldn't have. It doesn't matter. I just want to ask who else." Chapter 3485. I know that many of you have received benefits and want to do something that you shouldn't have. It's okay. I just want to ask who else. Yi Shiwen glanced at the holy masters, his eyes as sharp as a knife. Arrogant. These two words emerged in the minds of many celestial masters. Yi Shiwen's strength was quite good among the celestial masters. However, he wasn't at the top. However, he dared to say such words. This arrogance alone was enough to make them look at him in a new light. After all, not everyone was as arrogant as him. Many years ago, they had also been this arrogant, thinking that they were the most powerful in the world. However, ever since they had become heavenly venerables, they had naturally understood the disparity between extreme powerhouses. Their boundless ambitions had been worn down with each collision, and they no longer dared to challenge an extreme powerhouse that was stronger than them. They no longer had the lofty aspirations they had in the past. Yi Shiwen was able to advance from the Emperor Lord to the Holy Master Realm, and from the first realm to the fourth realm in a mere 10,000 years. This had a lot to do with his fearless and uncompromising courage. On the path of cultivation, although it was important to grind, it was also important to advance bravely. If one lost the will to advance bravely, then what right did one have to hope that one's cultivation could soar in a short period of time? Many people had a bit of understanding in their eyes, because Yi Shiwen's indifference had made them faintly understand something. This martial great master is even stronger. Mr. Huang, who was next to the Eastern Holy Master, said in a low voice. He had used secret sound transmission. Apart from East Tianzuan, no one else knew what he had said. Only those who were much stronger than him would be able to hear it. However, even if there were people who were stronger than Mr. Huang, it was impossible for them to be that much stronger than East Tianzuan. Thus, no one knew what he had said. The Eastern Holy Master nodded and said, Indeed, if I wasn't sure that he hadn't entered the fifth realm, and that there were no traces of the fifth realm nomological laws on his body, I would have almost thought that he had already entered the fifth realm. He had also used secret sound transmission, so even War Master and Silver Moon, who were very close to him, didn't notice it at all. It's indeed so. He's only at the fourth realm, yet he's already powerful to such an extent. It could be said to be rare since ancient times. Mr. Huang said. By rare, he naturally referred to the ancient epoch and the current martial epoch. He had seen the great destruction of the heavens and earth many times, but it was extremely rare for him to see such a ridiculously powerful one. However, he didn't know that Yi Shiwen's strength wasn't limited to this. Indeed, as long as he continues to grow, his future will be limitless. He could faintly feel Yi Shiwen's strength. He felt that it would be very difficult for Silver Moon to compete with Yi Shiwen even if they were to compete for the position of Eastern Celestial Master. It wasn't that Empyrean Master Silver Moon was too weak, but that Yi Shiwen was too strong. Yi Shiwen's future was boundless in his eyes. However, it was still in the distant future. Not to mention, he was confident that he would go further in the future. So, he wasn't afraid of anyone. Don't we need to take action? Mr. Huang asked. I'm afraid some people are ready to make a move. There's no need. He can handle it. As for those who shouldn't make a move, they won't make a move. How could people at that level step into a trap for others? Who doesn't know that the Moon City Lord is behind this? How much will he have to pay to get those people to make a move? Eastern Celestial Master shook his head as a disdainful sneer appeared on his face. Based on Yi Shiwen's current situation, unless it was a life-and-death struggle, only an expert of the seventh realm or above could defeat Yi Shiwen in a short period of time. However, such experts were big shots and had a very important say in the Heavenly Venerate Conference. How much capital did the Moon City Lord have to bribe them? Moreover, Yi Shiwen wasn't alone. He was a member of the Eastern Celestial Master's camp. This was enough to make many people hesitate to take action. Yi Shiwen didn't kill them all. He continued to chase after them because he knew very well what kind of place this was. There were countless celestial masters present at the Heavenly Venerate Conference. If he started a massacre here, he was afraid that the Moon City Lord would find a reason to target him. Wu Zun, although you have some strength, this is the venue of the Heavenly Venerate Conference. You're not allowed to be presumptuous. Moreover, there's been a lot of discussion during this period. You really should stand up and give an explanation. Suddenly, a figure stood up from among the many celestial masters. This figure had endless divine radiance on his body, like a waterfall that exuded endless brilliance. This was a matchless man, but his entire body was green. He was about the height of two people, and he looked dignified and dignified. He had the momentum to swallow mountains and rivers, and his aura soared into the sky. Compared to the celestial master child, he was much more powerful. Tong Zun. Yi Shiwen looked at the man in front of him and spat out these two words. He recognized this person. Although he couldn't recognize all the celestial masters, he still knew this person in front of him, even though he only knew this person from the information he had obtained. This was because he was a direct descendant of the Moon City Lord's camp and was also a veteran celestial master in the camp. His strength was terrifying. According to the information he had obtained from the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, Tong Zun wasn't a native of the Fortune God dynasty. Instead, he came from another small world, just like the Myriad Realms. Tong Zun dominated that world and later came to the Fortune God dynasty. Not long after he arrived at the Fortune Divine dynasty, he encountered a crisis. He provoked an Empyrean and almost died. Later, he was saved by the Moon City's Castellan who happened to pass by. From then on, he served the Moon City's Castellan wholeheartedly, and he even stepped into the Empyrean realm. After entering the Heavenly Venerate realm, the first thing he did was kill the Celestial Master who had hunted him down and almost caused him to die tragically. That battle had been earth-shattering. Tong Zun had successfully killed his opponent and announced the existence of another unparalleled Celestial Master. After that, he had officially become a direct descendant of the Moon City Lord and presided over the Moon City. His time of attaining the Tao was also very short compared to the other Celestial Masters. However, his cultivation base had improved very quickly. In just a mere 10 million years, he had already entered the Heavenly Venerate realm and entered an extremely profound realm. There had always been rumors that the Moon City Lord had treated him as a successor because the Moon City Lord knew that his son, Yin Yang, and the Joint Emperor were really useless. Hence, he had settled for the next best thing. In any case, he might not be the strongest among the Celestial Masters, but he was definitely one of the most famous. This time, when the Moon City had been captured, there had been Celestial Masters in the camp of the Moon City Lord who had fallen. On the contrary, he had escaped unscathed. I didn't expect you to know me. You have indeed been scheming for a long time. Copper Lord said simply, and then sealed Yi Shiwen's coffin. He was also a person who had been in a high position for a long time. In the past, he had been the ruler of a part of the world. When he came to the Fortune God dynasty, he was also a powerful extreme Tao expert. After becoming a celestial master, he had become the highest existence in the Fortune God dynasty. His words could not be rejected. Other than the Moon City Lord, he really didn't care about anyone else. Many celestial masters' eyes lit up when they saw this scene. After the incident with the celestial master child, everyone could see that Yi Shiwen was not someone to be trifled with. The celestial masters who had been roped in by the Moon City Lord didn't even have the courage to make a move. If they knew that Yi Shiwen was so terrifying, they wouldn't be courageous. They would simply be looking for trouble. Under such circumstances, Copper Lord, who was a direct descendant of the Moon City Lord, finally came forward. Most people were happy to see this happen, especially at this critical juncture in the fight for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. With the Moon City Lord biting onto the Eastern Heavenly Venerate camp like a mad dog, it was equivalent to having one less competitor. Why not? Don't put labels on me. Who here doesn't know about this so-called public opinion? What the hell is going on? Yi Shiwen sneered and said, You guarded Moon City, but let it fall into the hands of the Devil Tao era. This is the main culprit behind all this. Don't you feel even the slightest bit guilty? Why don't you kill yourself to thank the countless dead souls? In the face of Yi Shiwen's sharp counterattack, Copper Lord's expression didn't change. He only said coldly, You have a sharp tongue. Do you think you can rely on your sharp tongue to get away with this? You actually dared to kill the young city lord of Moon City. You have committed a heinous crime. Do you know that if you kill yourself now, I can make the decision to let the human race go and not exterminate them? Exterminate them. Yishuan's eyes flashed coldly. If he had a reverse scale, then the existence of the human race was definitely one of his reverse scales. This was a race that countless ancestors had defended wave after wave. This was a race that he had defended with his own blood. Now, Copper Lord was actually threatening him with the human race. Regardless of whether it was Copper Lord or the Moon City Lord, Yishuan already had the intention to kill them. How ridiculous! Do you think you can do it? A group of stray dogs who don't even have their own homes want to overturn the rain and clouds, stir up the world, and command the heroes of the world? What a joke! Yishuan laughed loudly. If you really think you can do it, then bring it on. Arrogant. You probably don't know how terrible of a mistake you have made. Do you think you can get away with the protection of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate this time? Absolutely impossible. Let me teach you a lesson first. I'll let you understand that you are just a newcomer among the Heavenly Venerates. You are still far from being able to show off. As soon as Copper Lord's voice fell, he moved with a bang. Chapter 3486. Tongzun moved with a bang. It was as if a towering divine mountain had moved all of a sudden. There was a kind of earth-shattering momentum in front of him. The boundless aura on his body suddenly locked onto Yishuan. He then took a step forward. Every step he took caused the chi of heaven and earth to boil violently. Although it was only controlled within a very small distance, it was still terrifying to look at from afar. He walked towards Yishuan step by step. He was neither hurried nor slow. It seemed that he was certain that Yishuan would not dodge or escape, so there was no need for him to do so at all. His green, bronze-like body flowed with all sorts of runes. At a glance, it was as if he could see a bronze civilization. Countless years ago, this world represented the Great Bronze Path. His body was engraved with a kind of civilization, and it was extremely terrifying. How could it not be terrifying to carry an entire civilization on his body with the power of a single person? When he walked in front of Yishuan, he directly attacked. It was just a simple punch. It instantly formed a terrifying vibration in the space, and everything was violently shattered. It was just a simple blow to take down Yishuan. It was obvious how conceited he was. Yishuan had already shown his amazing physical cultivation previously. However, he was not afraid at all. He dared to attack with his bare hands. It was indeed extremely terrifying. Yishuan did not move. The terrifying fist energy set off monstrous waves. His clothes fluttered in the wind. His hair fluttered in the wind, and the sky collapsed. This was a terrifying powerhouse. The Child Celestial Lord was not a match for him at all. He was not even worth mentioning. The fifth realm. Yishuan immediately judged that the strength of this Tongzun had probably entered the fifth realm. The strength of such a powerful master was shocking. However, he was also fearless. Like a god, he directly slapped the fist that was falling from the sky. He did not show any weakness and was unstoppable. Clang! A huge sound of metal colliding resounded. The most dazzling light erupted between the fist and the palm of the figure. The terrifying power that erupted was like the destruction of the world. It was as if thousands of volcanoes had exploded at the same time. It was as if thousands of suns had exploded at the same time, forming a terrifying tsunami that wreaked havoc in the world. Although the power of the palm and the fist had been minimized by both sides, the Emperor Lords watching from afar still felt pale and suffocated. At this moment, they truly understood that the difference between a heavenly venerate and an Emperor Lord was just too great. Some people thought that Yishuan had a record of slaughtering a heavenly master as an emperor. They didn't think much of it before. Maybe it was just that. But more people guessed that he might have taken advantage of the situation and taken advantage of others. But now that he saw it, he realized how laughable his thoughts were. Was it so easy to take advantage of a heavenly venerate? Even a severely injured heavenly venerate's strength far surpassed a peak sovereign emperor's. Yishuan was able to slaughter heavenly venerables with the body of an emperor lord, and he had relied on his own strength. Although he didn't know how he did it, it was definitely not a fluke. At this time, only the heavenly venerables could still watch the battle between both sides without changing their expressions. They weren't worried at all because they knew that both sides wouldn't attack recklessly and affect the entire hall. There was a solid barrier and array in this hall, but it couldn't withstand a fight between two heavenly venerables. So, both of them would pay attention when they attacked. What was there to be afraid of? It was hard to determine the winner in just one blow. Yishuan frowned slightly. This Copper Lord was really extraordinary. At this time, he had integrated with the 7th metal ancestral chi. His strength wasn't as simple as just a little bit more tyrannical. His physical body was enough to compete with a Dao tool without falling into a disadvantageous position. However, he didn't gain the upper hand in this collision. Although his strength and cultivation realm were a level lower than Bronze Zun's physical body cultivation was not to be underestimated. The Copper Lord was extremely shocked and couldn't help but retreat. His physical cultivation was also extraordinary. Although it wasn't to the point where he could compete with a Dao tool with his bare hands, he could compete with a Dao tool with great power. Such a physical cultivation was already extremely rare among the heavenly venerables, except for those who specialized in physical cultivation. This also had a certain relationship with the Qing Tong Dao that he cultivated. His natural physical cultivation was very tyrannical, but even so, he still couldn't gain the slightest advantage in Yi Shiwen's recruitment. Not to mention, he discovered that Yi Shiwen's realm was not as good as his. Yi Shiwen clearly hadn't reached the 5th realm, but he could burst out such combat power. A hint of fierceness flashed in his eyes. Apart from the shock, there was also a strong, murderous intent. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen completely, but he didn't know that Yi Shiwen had the same conviction to kill him before this. While he was still in shock, Yi Shiwen had already made his move. This time, it wasn't the Copper Lord who took the initiative, but Yi Shiwen who took the initiative to counterattack. Because there were so many heavenly venerables present, both sides couldn't really go all out. It was impossible to mobilize the power of heaven and earth and mobilize the laws to fight with all their strength. On the contrary, this was advantageous to Yi Shiwen. His strongest point was his physical cultivation. In terms of cultivation, he was inferior by a realm. How could Yi Shiwen let go of such an advantage? He immediately counterattacked. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and a loud sound was heard. A terrifying 6-paths roulette was formed and suppressed everything. It rushed towards the Copper Lord like a mountain. Although the Copper Lord was distracted for a period of time, his reaction wasn't slow at all. When Yi Shiwen counterattacked, his whole body was covered with endless bronze rust. It looked like it had experienced the glory of time. He immediately protected himself in it. Clang, clang, clang. Yi Shiwen's punches landed on the Copper Lord's side. His body directly made a deafening clanging sound. Every sound wave that spread out was the pattern of the Great Tao. However, it was sealed in a narrow area. It was as if there was a transparent cover that covered the aftermath of the battle between both sides within this area. Yi Shiwen had taken the initiative to attack Tong Zun. Tong Zun almost felt like vomiting blood when he was hit by Yi Shiwen's attacks. Tong Zun's physical body was also very tyrannical, and his martial power was one realm higher than Yi Shiwen's. Therefore, he wouldn't be defeated in one punch like that heavenly Lord child. However, he also felt like vomiting blood after being continuously hit like this. Roar! Finally, Copper Lord was completely enraged after being forced to this extent. He roared loudly and blocked Yi Shiwen's punch. Then, a terrifying magic power erupted from his body and soared into the sky. It erupted like a vast ocean and almost submerged the entire palace. It was incomparably terrifying. Copper Lord had been forced into a corner by Yi Shiwen. At that moment, the heavenly venerates present seemed to have a tacit understanding of each other. They joined hands to set up a barrier that contained the terrifying power within a certain range so that the entire palace wouldn't be blasted to smithereens. The terrifying coercion that leaked out at that moment had already made those emperors feel suffocated. It was as if the sky was about to collapse. Bian Xiaoye's face finally revealed a bit of anxiety. It wasn't that she hadn't seen Yishiwen fighting against other heavenly venerables. However, in her perception, none of them was as terrifying as the Copper Lord. Although it was difficult for her to distinguish the strength of the heavenly venerables with her cultivation, the Copper Lord was much stronger than the opponents that Yishiwen had defeated before. Therefore, she could still perceive it. How could she not be anxious? So strong. This martial lord has some tricks up his sleeves. He can actually force the Copper Lord to this point. The Copper Lord has been deliberately suppressing his martial power and didn't let his martial power erupt. However, I'm afraid there's no way to control it now. I'm afraid the Copper Lord is going to lose face this time. He's known as a rare genius in the world. Since entering the Fortune God dynasty, who knows how many people have been slapped in the face and stepped on their shoulders. He even became the right-hand man under the city lord of Moonlight City. I didn't expect that he would be forced to this point by a genius who's even more powerful than him. The heavenly venerables discussed animatedly. With his insight, how could he not see that the Copper Lord was completely caught off guard by Yishiwen just now? The Copper Lord's physical cultivation was also very strong. Coupled with his vigorous martial power, he could barely contend against a heavenly venerable Dao tool. However, he suffered a big loss in front of Yishiwen. Yishiwen's physical strength was even more terrifying. Then, he was beaten up and lost face. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. This was an extremely terrifying phenomenon. It expanded circle by circle, as if he was the only true god in the world, opening up everything. The Copper Lord's aura was still rising. However, at this moment, Yishiwen decisively attacked. The Copper Lord had just escaped from his attack range when he rushed forward again. A palm shot out and turned into a beam of light. It slapped the Copper Lord's body on the spot. It seemed as if the power of the entire world was absorbed into this palm. The power of creation flashed in it, and a terrifying power erupted in a flash. Bang! The Copper Lord was hit on the spot. A mouthful of old blood spurted out, and his whole body flew out. He was seriously injured by Yishiwen. The increasingly terrifying aura on his body was also interrupted in an instant. What the hell is this move? It can actually interrupt the Copper Lord's sublimation? Many people couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. The Copper Lord had been suppressing his martial power. Later, he was forced to sublimate by Yishiwen. He wanted to use his real strength to teach Yishiwen a lesson. This process was very short, and there shouldn't be any accidents. However, his sublimation was interrupted by Yishiwen's move, and he vomited blood with just a palm. It was really terrifying. Chapter 34:87. He interrupted Bronze Lord's sublimation with one move and made him vomit blood. Countless people were taken aback. Although it was said that the sublimation of a person was the most dangerous time, they also knew this. Therefore, it was often the most guarded time. Bronze Lord was not going to forcibly break through the realm or forcibly break the seal. He was just going to erupt his original strength. Who would have thought that his sublimation could be interrupted? Even if it was a fifth realm heavenly master, it was impossible to interrupt Bronze Lord's sublimation. It was completely illogical. Many people realized that the reason why Yishiwen could interrupt Bronze Lord's sublimation was not because of his own strength, but because of the amazing power of that move. This must be his trump card, the universe creation palm. Easter Tianzuan was not far away, watching with great interest. He didn't know what Yishiwen's palm was at first, but he quickly reacted. After all, he wasn't an ordinary person. Although he didn't follow the fate creation heavenly lord in a battle, and his qualifications might not be as good as war venerables, his eyesight wasn't bad. In addition, he had heard that Yishiwen had learned the universe creation palm before. How could he not guess that it must be the universe creation palm at this time? Only a peerless secret technique like the universe creation palm could allow Yishiwen, a fourth realm heavenly master, to interrupt the sublimation of a fifth realm Bronze Lord. There was a bit of envy in his eyes. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a peerless secret technique? However, these things were about opportunities. Without such an era, it was useless even if he wanted to obtain it. Who didn't have a trump card? Who didn't have their own secret technique? Who didn't have their own secret technique? If someone obtained it and wanted him to hand it over, then the entire Fortune God dynasty would be in a panic, because no one could predict whether they would be the next. Therefore, even if many people knew that Yi Shiwen knew the universe creation palm, no one dared to ask him to hand it over in the name of the Fortune God dynasty. At most, they would snatch it in private. This was because some rules could not be broken. They had to be obeyed by everyone. Unless one's strength had reached the level of the Fortune creation Heaven Lord, then one could ignore the rules. However, if one reached that level, he would not feel that the universe creation palm was very important, because what he knew and learned was not inferior to the universe creation palm. The others weren't as good as the Eastern Venerable. They immediately guessed that it was the universe creation palm. However, they soon understood that Yi Shiwen hadn't used the universe creation palm in public many times. But it was enough for them to figure it out. It was just that their reactions were a bit slower. A look of envy flashed in their eyes. Most Empyreans wouldn't be interested in the ultimate arts of ordinary Empyreans, even if the East Empyrean released his own ultimate art. At most, they would look at it and learn from it. However, the Fortune creation Heavenly Monarch was different. He was the strongest expert in the world, so the ultimate technique he left behind was naturally the strongest technique in the world. But now, it had fallen into Yi Shiwen's hands. How could they not be envious? This was a martial technique that could change the outcome of a battle. It should even be said that it was a manifestation of martial arts. Once it was used, it would have the power of the Great Way. It was just that Yi Shiwen's skill was far from reaching that level. However, it cannot be denied that the power of this martial technique was still there. It was because its creator was the Fortune Heaven Lord, the undisputed #1 in the world. Puff! Tong Zun was sent flying, actually coughing up blood from a single strike. This palm strike had stirred up the power of heaven and earth, severely injuring him. This was the horror of the universe creation palm. It was not only his own strength, but also the power of the world. It could exert a power that was far beyond his own strength. Tong Zun's eyes were also full of disbelief. He had never thought that he would be seriously injured by someone in a head-on way when he was sublimating and also when he was at his most guarded state. It was not a surprise attack. This palm was too terrifying. It could be said that this palm had scattered all of his momentum. His sublimation had failed. He wouldn't have vomited blood if he had been at his peak. However, he had held back a part of his strength for the sake of the palace hall. Obviously, Yi Shiwen wouldn't give him the opportunity to break out his true strength. Yi Shiwen was the only one who would give him the chance to break out. Yi Shiwen obviously knew how powerful he was. The more he knew, the more impossible it was for him to erupt. It would have been the same if it had been someone else. However, he was the one who was beaten. How could he not hate him? However, it was useless in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen also seized this opportunity. He didn't give him a chance to breathe. He took a step forward and slapped his palm again. His black hair fluttered. His expression was indifferent. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Ever since Tong Zun had said that he would exterminate the human race, he had already angered Yi Shiwen. He had touched his reverse scale. How could he hold back now? He attacked crazily. Boom, boom, boom. A series of storm-like attacks were launched. Countless laws were hit and scattered, forming a terrifying storm. Every attack seemed like the world was exploding. He didn't hold back at all. This series of attacks directly made Tong Zun badly mutilated. Although Tong Zun's true strength had reached the peak of the fifth realm, which was a level higher than Yi Shiwen's, it was useless. He couldn't use it at this moment. In a fight between experts, this was the difference of a little. After Yi Shiwen integrated the Gung Metal Ancestral Qi, he was able to compete with the experts of the fifth realm. The gap between him and Tong Zun wasn't too big. After using the Universe Creation Palm, Yi Shiwen had the ability to seriously injure Tong Zun. Normally, Yi Shiwen could at most use the Universe Creation Palm to fight Tong Zun. However, he could seriously injure Tong Zun now. Everyone saw the reason clearly. Naturally, they knew that Yi Shiwen's situation was an exception. However, this made them feel amazed. Such a miracle couldn't be replicated. Yi Shiwen, who was able to achieve such a miracle, naturally made them look up to him. They wouldn't underestimate him anymore. They could also see that Yi Shiwen was only at the fourth realm. However, he was able to beat Copper Zune to such a state even though he was only at the fourth realm. In many people's opinion, this was clearly because of the universe creation palm. However, no one knew about the existence of the seventh metal ancestral chi. At this time, the Gung metal ancestral chi had completely integrated with Yi Shiwen's physical body. It also carried the light of merit. His physical body was extremely tyrannical, not to mention that he hadn't erupted to his peak. Even if he was at his peak, it was unlikely for him to injure Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was enough to protect himself. It was certain that he could fight to a draw. With his cultivation at the peak of the fourth realm, being able to fight to a draw with Tong Zun, who was at the peak of the fifth realm, was shocking in itself. Yi Shiwen had regained his ability to fight beyond his realm and created another miracle. All the celestial venerables stood still. No one made a move. They only watched Tong Zun being beaten up by Yi Shiwen. Firstly, they didn't want to offend him because they weren't related to him. Tong Zun was indeed very powerful, but how bad could Yi Shiwen be? His strength was also extraordinary. The most important thing was that he had only cultivated for more than 10,000 years and had reached the fourth realm of the celestial venerable. His future achievements were simply limitless. The most important thing was that they were sure that Yi Shiwen didn't dare to kill anyone. He didn't kill the child celestial venerable just to teach him a lesson. On the other hand, Tong Zun only dared to say that he would teach Yi Shiwen a lesson. He didn't dare to say that he wanted to kill Yi Shiwen because he had to abide by the basic rules. Killing people was not allowed here. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. Killing in front of everyone and under the watchful eyes of the public would undoubtedly make everyone feel sad. They might not tolerate this rule-breaking person anymore. Unless one day, Yi Shiwen could surpass most of the celestial venerables and completely ignore all the celestial venerables. At that time, he would truly be free. Stop! Suddenly, there was a loud roar. A big hand stretched out from outside the hall and slammed directly towards Yi Shiwen. It was about to slap him to death on the spot. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a sense of danger. He immediately took a step forward and retreated. However, this big hand didn't give up and chased after him. It was determined to slap Yi Shiwen to death on the spot. In the face of such a terrifying attack, Yi Shiwen didn't panic. He kept retreating. However, he finally made a move the moment the palm was about to slap him. He flipped his palm, and a golden Gung metal ancestral chi appeared in his hand. At this time, he had completely refined the Gung metal ancestral chi. Naturally, he could use it freely. However, this ball of Gung metal ancestral chi instantly turned into a long sword. Then he grabbed it in his hand and slashed with a backhand slash. Puff! Everyone only heard a loud, tearing sound, only to see that the giant hand was directly cut open, turned into a sky full of spiritual chi, and was split apart. What surprised everyone even more was that in the sky full of spiritual chi that dissipated, there were actually a few drops of golden blood. However, Yi Shiwen quickly grabbed them away, and they knew very well who the owner of this big hand was. They might not know by looking at the big hand, but how could they not know by listening to the voice? Who else could it be other than the Moon City Lord? The Moon City Lord was a top powerhouse of the Fortune God dynasty. Even if he didn't use his full strength when he grabbed Yi Shiwen, ordinary celestial venerables wouldn't be able to resist him if he attacked in anger. It was already very impressive that Yi Shiwen could dodge, but he could even casually break this big hand. Such a performance was completely beyond everyone's understanding. Sure enough, a figure directly flew in. Who else could it be but the Moon City Lord? Chapter 3488. The Moon City Lord's face was filled with shock and anger. He probably didn't expect that he would be injured by Yi Shiwen. Drops of golden blood were still dripping from his palm. He estimated that the worst outcome would be that he couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen, but he didn't expect an even worse outcome. In his heart, He had lost face in front of all the heavenly venerables. He looked at Yi Shiwen with unconcealed murderous intent. Thinking of the tragic death of his beloved son, it was as if a flame was burning in his heart, burning through the sky. The aura on his body was exploding wildly. The most dazzling light was flashing, as if countless volcanoes were erupting together. Opposite him, Yi Shiwen was directly bearing this terrifying coercion. However, he remained motionless, and his countenance didn't change at all. This was one of the wonderful effects of integrating the virtuous aura into the body. No matter how powerful the enemy was, they wouldn't be able to overwhelm Yi Shiwen with their imposing manner. Within the same realm, one could directly make one's aura invisible. It wasn't forcefully resisting, but turning it into a gentle breeze that dissipated into nothingness. The Moon City Lord's pressure was unparalleled, but it was only directed at Yi Shiwen. The others didn't feel anything, but after sensing that it was useless against Yi Shiwen, they stopped. The injury on his hand had already recovered in a short time. This seemed terrifying, but for the Moon City Lord's recovery ability, this was already very slow. Under normal circumstances, he would have recovered in an instant. There wouldn't even be a drop of blood left. It was just that injuries caused by Gung Metal Ancestral Qi weren't so easy to recover. This was one of the origin treasures of the entire Gung Metal era. There might not be many of them in the entire era. The Metal Attribute Law was an offensive law, so one could imagine how powerful the Gung Metal Ancestral Qi was. If it was used to practice swordsmanship, it could definitely be refined into a matchless treasure sword. It was just that Yi Shiwen only used it for body tempering. Eastern Tianzuan, the War Venerable, had a complicated look on his face. He glanced at the Eastern Tianzuan next to him, only to see that the Eastern Tianzuan was motionless with a smile on his face. It's okay, he wouldn't dare to act recklessly. The Eastern Tianzuan said faintly. His face was full of confidence. He was very certain that the Moon City Lord wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Good. The Moon City Lord said coldly. His eyes were like a ferocious beast as he stared at Yi Shiwen. You actually dared to injure someone in the venue. Are you completely looking down on all the heavenly venerables in this world? I will take you down today and teach you a good lesson. I will teach you how to be a good person. The Moon City Lord shouted loudly and put a big hat on Yi Shiwen. However, the other heavenly venerates didn't have much of an expression on their faces. This was because they knew very well the grudges between the two sides. How could they get involved in something that didn't benefit them? The Moon City Lord wasn't to be trifled with, but was the Eastern Heavenly Venerate a pushover? Moreover, this Yi Shiwen didn't look like a pushover. Assault and injure? I don't think you have the right to make a decision here. Everyone can see who made the first move. Do you think everyone is blind? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sneer. This is Sun City. It's not up to you, the City Lord of Moon City, to decide. You should take care of your Moon City first. Yi Shiwen's words were equally sharp and didn't give in at all. The Moon City Lord was slightly angry. Yi Shiwen was clearly pointing out that he had lost Moon City. It wasn't a hidden meaning. What a sharp-tongued heavenly venerate. I want to see how much of your strength is as good as your glib tongue. The Moon City Lord was furious and was about to make a move. Suddenly, he heard a hearty laugh. Friend, please calm down. As soon as the voice fell, a figure walked out of the hall. It was the Sun City Lord. The City Master of Moon City stopped immediately. In Sun City, the real boss was the Sun City Master. Even the City Master of Moon City had to lower his head to the Sun City Master. Not to mention that his Moon City had been contributed. He was like a stray dog now. No matter how angry he was, he could only endure it. All right, we are all heavenly venerables. It's improper to fight in public like this. The Sun City Lord looked at Yi Shiwen and the others and scolded. It didn't sound like a problem, but why did Yi Shiwen hear a hint of instigation in his words? It wasn't appropriate to fight in public. What if it wasn't in public? Hearing this, Tong Zun and the heavenly venerate child could only glare at Yi Shiwen with hatred. In the end, they didn't dare to take another step forward. This was a top expert of the Fortune God dynasty who was comparable to the Moon City Lord. The heavenly venerate child's injuries had already healed. His injuries weren't serious. It was just that Yi Shiwen had taught him a lesson. On the other hand, Tong Zun's injuries were a little more serious. He hadn't fully recovered yet. Yi Shiwen's previous beating had hurt his vitality. However, the Sun City Lord pretended as if he didn't see it. He only reprimanded them, and both sides were beaten 50 times. Although Yi Shiwen was on the defensive side, he was still able to beat the two of them up. Naturally, he wasn't at a disadvantage. Yi Shiwen didn't mind. Anyway, he knew that no matter how big the grudge was, they couldn't really fight to the death here. At this time, he had already taken advantage of them. Naturally, he had to stop while he was ahead. The Moon City Lord could only let it go. However, his pair of sinister eyes fell on Yi Shiwen from time to time, as if he couldn't wait to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. All right, since that's the case, let's all return to our seats, the Sun City Lord said. As he spoke, he took a step forward and sat on one of the 15 special thrones. The Moon City Lord, Eastern Heavenly Venerate, Southern Heavenly Venerate, and the others also sat down. This time, besides the East, South, West Heavenly Venerates, and Space-Time Heavenly Venerate, only the Sun City Lord and the Moon City Lord had come. Yi Shiwen sat on the throne with some doubts in his heart. It should be known that this was a meeting to elect a middle Heavenly Venerate. It could be said that the decision made at this meeting was legally binding in the Fortune God dynasty. Once elected, even if others were unwilling, there was no way to overturn it because it was the will of all the Heavenly Venerates. Only 2 of the 10 great divine cities' city lords had come. The others didn't come. Could it be that they had given up on this time's election? If they wanted to ascend to the position of middle Heavenly Venerate, they had to at least be present at the scene. How could it be possible to win the election with just an incarnation? The position of middle Heavenly Venerate was extraordinary. No Heavenly Venerate dared to underestimate the significance of the position of middle Heavenly Venerate. If no one came, it almost meant that they had given up on the selection. Although the 10 great divine cities were scattered throughout the era battlefield and were far away from each other, it wasn't difficult for the city lords to rush over with their strength. We can start now, Western Heavenly Venerate suddenly said. Yes, we can start now. Space-Time Heavenly Venerate immediately responded. He immediately understood what Western Heavenly Venerate meant. He wanted to take this opportunity to make the final decision and exclude the city lords who hadn't come. Since everyone is here, let's start. The Eastern Venerate spoke indifferently, but he had the same thoughts in his heart. Any one of the city lords of the 10 great divine cities could be compared to them. It was naturally for the best if they could eliminate 8 competitors at this time. I also agree. We can start now. The battle to recover Moon City cannot be delayed. Western Heavenly Venerate opened her red lips slightly and said. The reason that she gave was truly irrefutable, even if one wanted to. Wait, there is still one person who hasn't come. Sun City's city lord suddenly said. Who is it? Northern Heavenly Venerate frowned slightly and said. Since he hasn't come, it means that he has automatically given up on this time's election. What are we waiting for? Since we have waited for so long, what's the harm in waiting for a moment more? Sun City City Lord said unhurriedly. It was rare that Moon City City Lord, who was next to him, didn't refute. Or rather, his eyes were fixed on Yi Shiwen. His eyes were cold and murderous. Even though they were far away, everyone could still feel it. Eastern Heavenly Venerate was startled. What did Sun City's City Lord mean? It should be known that it would be beneficial for him to have fewer competitors. It was really unusual for him to appear at this time, to delay for time. He could almost smell the effect of crafty plots and machinations in the air. If Eastern Heavenly Venerate could think of such a thing, the other Heavenly Venerates naturally weren't stupid. They immediately guessed that there must be something he didn't know about. In particular, the several Fortune Divine Dynasties' Heavenly Venerables sensed that something was amiss. This time's Heavenly Venerables Conference had been forced by the Fortune Divine Dynasties' Heavenly Venerables Conference to be held. However, the 10 great divine cities' city lords also had their own designs on the middle Heavenly Venerate position. However, it seemed that something was wrong today. In the 10 great divine cities, besides Sun City City Lord, who was the host, there was only Moon City City Lord, who was like a stray dog living in Sun City. The other 8 great divine cities, city lords of heaven, earth, mysterious, earthly, cosmos, and chaos didn't come at all. It was as if they didn't care at all. This simply didn't make sense. In addition, they could obviously eliminate more competitors now, but Sun City City Lord wanted to delay for time. Who was he waiting for? Was it someone who could reverse the situation? Which of the 8 great divine cities, city lords? The other heavenly venerates also thought of this. Suddenly, Moon City's city lord, who had been staring at Yishuan, said, "Before the middle heavenly venerate conference begins, I have something to say. I must let all the heavenly venerates at the heavenly venerate conference bear witness." Taoist friend, please speak. What does Taoist friend want to say? The heavenly venerates asked one after another. However, they seem to have guessed something in their hearts. That is, this human martial venerate killed my son when the fortune god dynasty was facing a great enemy. He also killed an ancient era's heavenly venerate that I captured. This caused a confrontation between me and Eastern heavenly venerate. This is an unforgivable crime. It is more likely that he is a spy from the ancient era. I hope that the fortune god dynasty will punish him and grind his bones to ashes. Chapter 34:89. That is, this human revered martial artist killed my son and a heavenly venerate from the ancient era that I captured when the enemy of the fortune god dynasty was right in front of us. This caused a confrontation between me and the Eastern heavenly venerate. This is an unforgivable crime. It is more likely that he is a spy from the ancient era. I hope that the fortune god dynasty will punish him and turn him into ashes. The Moon City Lord looked at Yi Shiwen with a cold expression and said the above words word by word. Yi Shiwen was suddenly enlightened. He immediately understood the many things that had been difficult for him to understand. He was a little puzzled at first. Why did the Moon City Lord, who had always been arrogant and domineering, not do anything after he killed Yin Yang and the Integration Emperor? He only stirred up the so-called public opinion. The Moon City Lord should also be very clear that the so-called public opinion could not do anything to Yi Shiwen. So what was the Moon City Lord's purpose? It turned out that it was all a pretense before. This was the real killing move. He really wanted to put Yi Shiwen to death so that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate would not have a chance to make a move. After Yi Shiwen killed Yin Yang and the Integration Emperor, he led the human race army to Sun City and set up camp. If he made a move, it would probably attract the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. With the Eastern Heavenly Venerate's interference, he would not be able to gain any advantage. But now it was different. As long as Yi Shiwen's crime was determined at the Heavenly Venerate meeting, it would be the will of the entire Fortune God dynasty. Even the Eastern Heavenly Venerate would not be able to say anything. At that time, Yi Shiwen's life and death would really be in the hands of the Moon City Lord. It is indeed a good strategy. Moreover, it is an open and above-board strategy. It is very difficult for an ordinary person to resist, but unfortunately, he doesn't know what kind of trump card I have in my hands. So, it is useless for him to jump up and down. Yi Shiwen's mouth flashed with a disdainful sneer. Although he was facing the Moon City Lord's accusations, he was not moved at all. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen and saw that he was not moved at all. They did not know if he really did not take it to heart or if he was shrewd. This kind of accusation could not move him at all. However, as soon as the Moon City Lord's voice fell, there was soon a voice of agreement. Yes, there's a possibility that Wu Zun is a spy. Otherwise, how could he provoke the grievances between the two camps of the Fortune God dynasty? A life for a life, Wu Zun will pay the price. Honorable Wu, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to destroy the peace of my Fortune divine dynasty? Wu Zun, he must be a spy from the ancient era. Accusations came one after another, each louder and more unpleasant than the last. Yi Shiwen just turned a deaf ear to it and said to himself, he really connected a lot of people. Venerable Emperor, Emperor, Wu Emperor, 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 and Emperor, Emperor, Moon City, Emperor, 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 God, King, Master, Emperor, 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 and Master. He woo, Emperor, woo woo, I, Emperor, King, Emperor, Emperor, re woo, King of woo, he, re, Emperor, 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 and he, and the Emperor, and the re woo zun. What do you mean by that? You can talk nonsense without evidence? One of the heavenly venerables shouted. You can say that I am a spy from the ancient era without evidence. Why can't I say it? Yi Shiwen smiled faintly and said, I don't care how many benefits you have received from him, but there are some things you shouldn't meddle in. Yi Shiwen's attitude made the heavenly venerables angry and angry. In their eyes, no matter how good Yi Shiwen's performance was, he was still a junior. How could they not be angry when Yi Shiwen dared to look down on them? Moreover, they felt a little guilty. Yi Shiwen had exposed the conflict of interest between them, so they shouted to cover up the guilt in their hearts. Oh, there's such a thing. The corner of Sun City Lord's mouth curved in confusion. Now that the Moon City Lord's matter was exposed, who would pay attention to him stalling for time? His goal had been achieved. In that case, we have to investigate. After all, this is the most crucial time to take back Moon City. We can't ignore it. The Sun City Lord was obviously on the Moon City Lord's side and wanted to put pressure on Yi Shiwen. It was as if this was the first time he had heard of it. In fact, how could he not know about the frenzy of public opinion caused by the Moon City Lord? He was just pretending not to know. The heavenly venerables present probably knew about the matter between Yin Yang Harmony Emperor and Moon Empress Bien Xiaoya like the back of their hands. However, knowing the truth was one thing, standing on the side was another. The other great heavenly venerables had no intention of coming forward to help Yi Shiwen out. At this time, Yi Shiwen was a capable general of the Eastern Heavenly Venerables camp. Losing him was equivalent to losing an arm of the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. Why not? Wu Zun, you still dare to deny it now, said the Moon City Lord. Whether you are a spy or not, just in case, I will capture you first and investigate this matter thoroughly. As the City Lord of Moon City spoke, a sinister smile appeared on his face. If Yi Shiwen were to fall into his hands, then it would only be a matter of a few words from him. He would definitely make Yi Shiwen beg for death, but couldn't beg for it. This was the real reason why he had endured until now. Once he caught Yi Shiwen, he would cripple his martial arts, extract his soul, and torture him day and night. The so-called truth of the matter would be nothing more than something he could fabricate at any time. Yi Shiwen understood that the Moon City Lord finally couldn't stand it anymore. He made such a domineering person use such a scheme to deal with Yi Shiwen. One could imagine how much he hated Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen fell into the Moon City Lord's hands, the consequences would be obvious. Wait, the Eastern Heavenly Venerables made a move at the critical moment. Almost instantly, he interrupted the Moon City Lord's technique. Eastern Heavenly Venerables, what's wrong? Are you going to protect this spy? The Moon City Lord turned his head and couldn't help but glare angrily. His face looked like a glaring Vajra. However, he was terrified in his heart. He had been guarding against the intervention of the Eastern Tianzuan since the very beginning. The following matters would be easy to handle as long as he could capture Yi Shiwen with lightning speed. It was impossible for the Eastern Tianzuan to fight with him for this. Moreover, there were many people standing behind him. However, even with all his precautions, he still couldn't stop the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. After so many years, the Eastern Heavenly Venerables' skills were even more profound. They were almost unfathomable. Protecting the spy? I don't think you should call me that before the matter is thoroughly investigated, said the Eastern Heavenly Venerables faintly. The Moon City Lord was strong, but he wasn't inferior. In terms of status, he wasn't inferior at all. Not to mention, the Moon City Lord was like a stray dog at this time. How could he pay attention to him? I have no intention of protecting anyone. It's just that I heard a version that doesn't seem to be the case. Why don't we talk after listening to it? What do you think? Said the Eastern Heavenly Venerables slowly and calmly. It seemed that everything was under his control. He didn't care about the threat of the overbearing Moon City Lord and the looming Sun City Lord who was siding with the Moon City Lord. What other version is there? He is just quibbling. I don't think there is a need to listen to what he has to say. Let's capture him on the spot. We can slowly investigate the other matters," said the Moon City Lord immediately vigilantly. The Eastern Heavenly Venerable's attack was within his expectations, but the latter's words were completely out of his expectations. Therefore, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Since the Eastern Heavenly Venerable said so, he must have some confidence. For a moment, he couldn't think of anything that could be used against him by the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. At this time, he couldn't help but be vigilant. He almost immediately decided that he couldn't let Yi Shiwen speak. No matter what Yi Shiwen wanted to say, he couldn't continue to say it. As the saying goes, if you listen to both sides, you will be enlightened. What is it that you can't let people finish speaking? Suddenly, just as the Eastern Heavenly Venerables and the Moon City Lord were about to confront each other, the Western Heavenly Venerables suddenly spoke up to support the Eastern Heavenly Venerables and Yi Shiwen. The Western Heavenly Venerable's voice was pleasant to hear. It was like a silver bell, but it had a decisive effect. It instantly reversed the situation on the field. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't help but look at the Western Heavenly Venerables in astonishment. It was because he never thought that the Western Heavenly Venerables would actually speak up to support him. Wasn't it their purpose to weaken all competitors? "Thank you for your help." Yi Shiwen secretly transmitted his voice to the Western Heavenly Venerable's ears. "What are you thanking me for? Is it strange for me to speak up? Do you think I will only hit you when you are down?" said the Western Heavenly Venerables as if he was amused. "I want to compete for the position of Middle Heavenly Venerables. Naturally, I will fight for it with my own strength and merits. I don't like those crafty plots, evil spirits, and evil spirits. The Moon City Lord is too domineering. In the end, he is at a disadvantage. Moreover, I know that they just want to delay time. I also want to see how they want to play. It would be best if they can give me a surprise." The Western Heavenly Venerable's reply stunned Yi Shiwen for a moment. Then he understood. A proud person like her disdained to use such crafty plots to weaken her opponent. That was an insult to her own ability. If she wanted something, she would take it openly. "Perform well. I also want to see what blackmail you have on him. It would be best if you could be so calm from the beginning and make him suffer. I have disliked him for a long time." The Western Heavenly Venerables stopped speaking after she finished speaking. She just looked down as if she hadn't said what she had just said. "Humph." Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He looked at the Moon City Lord and said, "The Moon City Lord wants to silence me so quickly. It is not because of anything else. It is because he is afraid that others will find out. In fact, he is the spy that the devil era planted in the Fortune God dynasty." As soon as Yi Shiwen said this, everyone was in an uproar. Chapter 3490. Yi Shiwen's words immediately caused an uproar in the entire venue. Spy. The Moon City Lord, one of the 10 great divine cities, was actually a spy of the demon era. Regardless of whether this was true or not, the heavenly venerates present were in an uproar just by raising such an opinion. It could be said to be a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 2 people present. Even the Sun City Lord, who had always looked like he had victory in his grasp, widened his eyes. Although he had guessed that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate must have had his reasons for intervening, he hadn't expected Yi Shiwen to say such explosive words. Venomous slander. After a long period of silence, everyone finally recovered from the loud roar of the City Lord of Luna City. The Moon City Lord seemed to be dumbfounded by Yi Shiwen's words. He hadn't expected Yi Shiwen to actually accuse him like this. When it came to accusations, there was probably nothing more serious than this. If the Fortune God dynasty could tolerate anything, then this matter was absolutely intolerable. He had used it to deal with Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen had actually done the exact opposite and used the same trick against him. However, he quickly regained his composure and sneered, "You dare to frame me with empty words? That's an unforgivable crime." The Moon City Lord wasn't an ordinary person. He almost immediately reversed the situation. Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid at all. He just said, "Previously, I had a conflict with the Moon City Lord at the Heavenly Venerate meeting. Then, I was besieged by several demon-era Heavenly Venerates. As far as I know, these demon-era heavenly venerates were all recruited by the Moon City Lord. Everyone had a look of realization because they believed him almost instantly. This was in line with the Moon City Lord's vengeful character, so what he said was 100% true. The Moon City Lord definitely wouldn't be wrongly accused. If the Moon City Lord didn't do anything and just let Yi Shiwen go, then that wouldn't make sense. Moreover, everyone knew that ever since he lost Moon City, the Moon City Lord had become increasingly unreasonable and domineering. This was also very normal. Everyone believed that it was done by the Moon City Lord. However, the problem was that the Moon City Lord did not do it himself. How could he be caught by Yi Shiwen? And it was even pointed out with such confidence. Shut up. If you continue to slander me, don't blame me for being impolite. How could I possibly be related to the people of the demonic epic? The Moon City Lord sneered. Although he did not know how Yi Shiwen found out about this matter, he did not know. Although he didn't know where Yi Shiwen got the information, there was one thing he could be sure of. When Yi Shiwen contacted Yi Shiwen, he didn't leave any information behind. Even the one who showed up was only a subordinate. He knew very well that this was a taboo. The Fortune God dynasty had very little control over the various heavenly venerables because they were already the highest rulers of the Fortune God dynasty. Especially for someone like him, it could be said that there was no one higher than him in the Fortune God dynasty. Even if a middle heavenly venerate was chosen, he would only be a deputy ruler. After all, he could not order him around like the Fortune God heavenly monarch. However, there were some taboos that could not be violated. That was being too close to the ancient eras. Even though almost all of the Fortune God dynasty's heavenly venerables had connections in the ancient eras. After all, there were too many ancient eras. Not every ancient era would fight to the death with the Fortune God dynasty. Moreover, those who could befriend them were, without exception, the outstanding figures of the ancient eras. They were all powerhouses who had reached the peak of the Great Tao. There were often situations where they would not get to know each other without fighting. However, that was all in private and could not be put on the table. Not to mention using one's connections in the ancient eras to deal with the Fortune God dynasty's heavenly venerables. That would definitely be a problem. No one would be able to accept it. Therefore, he had to be very careful. Even if the people of the demonic epic knew that it was his intention, they had no evidence. Although the Moon City Lord was arrogant, he was not reckless and ignorant. Otherwise, he would not have lived until today. This was different from him and the Radiant Holy Venerate, and Yi Shiwen and Heaven Talisman Immortal. The former Radiant Holy Venerate was subdued by the Moon City Lord. He was definitely more direct than the direct descendants. Although Heaven Talisman Immortal was not subdued by Yi Shiwen, he relied on Yi Shiwen. He could barely be considered as one of them. He could no longer be counted as part of the ancient eras. He was certain that Yi Shiwen would not be able to produce any evidence. Therefore, he could speak with certainty. However, he never expected that Yi Shiwen did not have any intention of following the routine. He did not play his cards according to common sense. Yi Shiwen faintly smiled and said, "I dare to swear to the heavens that I didn't lie about this matter. Do you dare to do so?" Yi Shiwen had just finished speaking when a loud, thunderous sound suddenly burst out, and everyone immediately understood what was going on. Yi Shiwen was swearing to the heavens. The heavens had sensed it and sent down the sound of thunder to show that it was testifying for Yi Shiwen. If not, it would not have been this sound of thunder, but lightning and thunder. It did not matter if ordinary people casually pointed to the heavens and swore, because the heavens would not care. However, people like them could not. They were already celestial venerates who were above the heavens and earth. Their every move would be noticed by the heavens. Once they pointed to the heavens and swore, they had to tell the truth. If there was the slightest bit of falsehood, the heavens would retaliate. This was because lying in front of the heavens was equivalent to playing with the heavens. It was a heinous crime. Even a celestial venerate could not bear such consequences. The consequences of lying were countless times more serious than ordinary cultivators. Therefore, when Yi Shiwen pointed to the heavens and swore, everyone believed him. In fact, everyone already believed him because this was in line with the Moon City Lord's style of doing things. It was just that they had to confirm it again now. The Moon City Lord was forced to this extent by Yi Shiwen. He immediately turned red because he did not expect Yi Shiwen to act so unconventionally. Evidence? Was there a need for evidence? Of course there was. However, now that he had pointed to the heavens and used the heavens as his witness, there was no need for any evidence. This was because the testimony of the heavens was the most reliable and irrefutable evidence. This made him even more speechless than directly taking out evidence that he had instigated the Devil Path era's people. The Devil Path era took the lead and led many ancient eras to contribute Moon City. They should have been my Fortune God dynasty's archenemy. They have even tried to attack my Fortune God dynasty time and time again. But you actually secretly contacted them. What are your intentions? Do you dare to swear to the heavens that you have never instigated or hinted the Devil Path era's devil venerates to attack me? Yi Shiwen shouted as he pointed at the Moon City Lord. Yi Shiwen's voice was like a great bell that struck the hearts of every heavenly venerate and emperor present. Many people looked at the Moon City Lord with incredulity and schadenfreude in their eyes. In their hearts, they felt that this was really strange. The Devil Path era had just displayed its invincible might and captured Moon City. They had chased the Moon City Lord out and made him panic like a stray dog. But in the blink of an eye, the Moon City Lord seemed to have given up on the hatred of Moon City's capture, and so easily contacted them to kill Yi Shiwen for him. If the crowd did not think much of it at the beginning, then now, they suddenly began to have doubts in their hearts. This matter was indeed not Yi Shiwen speaking carelessly. There was indeed something suspicious about it. Since Yi Shiwen had already pointed to the heavens and sworn to the heavens, he would at most conceal some things. There was no way he would lie, so the suspicions fell on the Moon City Lord. Everyone looked at the Moon City Lord in unison, as if hoping that he could give an explanation. The Moon City Lord finally understood Yi Shiwen's plan at this time. He roared in his heart. Yi Shiwen did not take the normal path at all. He did not follow the normal routine. It was really a headache. Do you dare to swear? Yi Shiwen stared at the Moon City Lord aggressively. He wanted to force the Moon City Lord into a dead end and force the answer in one fell swoop. Swear? Who do you think I am? How can I swear for your matters? The Moon City Lord quickly reacted and said, so what if this matter was confirmed? As long as he did not swear, what could others do to him? He could not swear. Even if others had already confirmed it, he absolutely could not swear. Once he swore, he would either tell the truth or lie to the Heavenly Tao. Then, the Heavenly Tao would not need anyone else to do anything. The Heavenly Tao would be able to severely injure him. Even someone as strong as he was did not dare to forcibly resist the Heavenly Tao. The others suddenly came to a realization. Seeing the Moon City Lord make such a statement, how could they not understand that Yi Shiwen should really be right? Everyone was speechless. Even if they weren't spies from the demonic path epic like Yi Shiwen said, they had actually forgotten that Moon City had been conquered by the demonic path epic along with many other ancient epics. This left everyone speechless. In addition, I also caught a witness. Yi Shiwen grabbed Mr. Ghost from his inner world. At this time, although Mr. Ghost was not dead, he had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen and sealed. He had been maintaining a half-dead appearance. Although everyone had not seen him before, they could still see the aura of the Devil Tao era that he exuded. Their expressions became solemn. If Yi Shiwen had no evidence before, the only thing they could believe was the Heavenly Tao oath. Now he even found a witness. This person is called Mr. Ghost. He follows Yin Yang, an integration emperor, all year round. I would like to ask, why does your son have an uncontrollable expert from the Devil Tao era with him all year round? Don't tell me you don't know. Chapter 3491. The Moon City Lord's face darkened when he saw this person being exposed because he remembered that this person was indeed someone close to his son. Yi Shiwen didn't fabricate this person. This Mr. Ghost was actually someone from the Devil Tao era. What were they trying to do by hiding beside his son? What were they trying to instigate his son to do? In the beginning, he couldn't understand why his son was so daring, but now he completely understood. He had already warned Yin Yang and Integration Emperor not to interfere or provoke Yi Shiwen because of Yi Shiwen's matter. After all, Yi Shiwen was a heavenly venerate. Others would at most say that he was domineering and insolent. However, if Yin Yang and Integration Emperor still dared to provoke Yi Shiwen, then they deserved to die. But in the end, his son still made a move against Bian Xiaoye, which led to a war between the two camps. With his wisdom, it wasn't difficult for him to understand that such a terrible outcome was caused by the instigation of the Devil Dao era. But at this point, he absolutely couldn't admit to such a thing. While he was being questioned by Yi Shiwen, all the heavenly venerates had figured out that Mr. Ghost often appeared beside Yin Yang and Integration Emperor. It wasn't difficult for them to find out this information because Yin Yang and Integration Emperor had appeared in public with Mr. Ghost more than once. Naturally, it was easy to find out. At this moment, they began to look at the city lord with suspicion in their eyes. If it was said that he was just venting his anger, they could still understand. But now that Mr. Ghost had appeared, they began to really doubt it. Could it be that the city lord of Moon City was really related to the demonic era? He might even be a spy of the Devil Dao era. Thinking of this, many heavenly venerates' eyes began to turn sharp. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to doubt the Moon City Lord's identity. But things are different now. Admittedly, the Moon City Lord possessed remarkable abilities in the Fortune God dynasty, and 100 people would respond to his call. But when did he become so awe-inspiring in the Devil Dao era? A single sentence from him could summon 3 to 5 Devil Dao era's archdevil ancestors to kill Yi Shiwen. This kind of ability was not something an ordinary person could have. However, what they didn't know was that although the Moon City City Lord had sent a message, he had exaggerated Yi Shiwen's abilities and viewed him as a rare genius. The Devil Dao era's main purpose in coming here was to eliminate the Fortune God dynasty's peerless geniuses that might appear in the martial epic. Secondly, there was actually a demon venerate from the Demon Dao epoch by his son's side. This in itself was very strange. It was no longer news that Moon City City Lord doted on Yin Yang and Emperor fusion. All the Empyreans had heard of this and were very clear about it. The demonic Dao epoch had actually placed someone on his son's side? What kind of behavior was this? If it were them, they would have already killed the Demon Dao epoch's demon venerate, not to mention the Moon City City Lord who valued his son as much as his life. The Moon City City Lord's inability to see through Mr. Ghost's disguise was non-existent in their minds. The Moon City City Lord was one of the most powerful people in the entire Fortune God dynasty, so it was impossible that he couldn't see through Mr. Ghost's disguise. Unless both sides had colluded long ago, and the Devil Dao epoch's demon venerate had also obtained his tacit approval to infiltrate his son's side. Only then would it make sense. Thinking of this, all the Empyreans seemed to have figured out many things that they didn't understand before. Even a Moon City's city lord hesitated at this point. He began to have some doubts. Could it be that the Moon City City Lord was really related to the Devil Dao era? This kind of relationship was not the kind that the Fortune God dynasty could allow in secret. It was the kind of relationship where the Moon City City Lord would betray the Fortune God dynasty's interests in exchange for his own interests. No Empyrean could tolerate this kind of thing because they had long been one with the Fortune God dynasty. Harming the Fortune God dynasty's interests was the same as harming their interests. The Moon City City Lord was at a loss for words. He could only quickly say, "I really didn't know he was from the Devil Dao era." At this time, he was also anxious and angry. He was played by the Devil Dao era. Such a thing actually happened right under his nose. Can you guarantee that you have never had any connection with the Devil Dao era since ancient times? Yi Shiwen was not willing to let him off the hook. There were so many people present. If there was anyone who was willing to believe that the Moon City City Lord didn't know about Mr. Ghost's existence, then it was him. Mr. Ghost had a special aura concealment method. Before fighting him personally, even Yi Shiwen couldn't see through his identity. He also didn't know which era Mr. Ghost was from. But at this time, the two sides were already at each other's throats. How could he give him a chance to breathe? The Moon City's city lord nearly choked because he really couldn't say such words. He couldn't swear to the heavens. It didn't matter if he said it casually, but deceiving the heavens would result in a backlash from the heavenly Tao. All of a sudden, Yishuan had forced him into a corner and grasped his sore spot. Yishuan didn't care whether the city lord knew Mr. Ghost or not. He just kept pressuring him. Moreover, the city lord had long been in contact with the Devil Tao era. Both of them could make use of each other in many ways. They weren't completely hostile. Although they would usually fight to the death when they met, it was still necessary to make use of each other when necessary. Just like this time, the Moon City's Castellan could get rid of a hidden danger, and the Devil Path era could get rid of a genius from the Fortune Divine Dynasty, eliminating a hidden danger in the future. It was a win-win situation. You want to shout, so what if I have a cooperation with the Devil Tao era? All of you sanctimonious people, which one of you doesn't have connections with the ancient era? But he couldn't shout this. Although it was the truth, once he shouted it, he would immediately become the target of public criticism. Even if he didn't die, he would still die. The East, South, North, and West Heavenly Venerables, as well as the Sun City's City Lord, such a lineup was enough to make him suffer. At this time, the East Heavenly Venerables stepped forward with a satisfied smile on his face. Yishuan's series of counterattacks were really great. He had directly forced the Moon City's City Lord into a corner. This effect was much better than he had expected. Fellow Taoists, everyone saw the situation just now. The Moon City's City Lord really can explain himself. Whether he has connections with the Devil Tao era or not, this matter needs to be investigated later. However, he definitely can't be allowed to participate in this middle Heavenly Venerate selection. Before he can explain himself, we can't let him continue to lead the remaining Moon City's forces. The East Heavenly Venerate said slowly. In fact, if we find out anything, I don't think the position of Moon City's City Lord is suitable to continue holding on to. I'm sure everyone knows what kind of place the 10 great divine cities are. It concerns the safety of the entire Fortune God dynasty. He made a huge mistake and lost Moon City. This is already an unforgivable mistake. In addition, he has an unclear relationship with the Devil Tao era. For safety's sake, I think we should ask him to give up the position of Moon City's City Lord and find someone else. You dare? The Moon City Lord was enraged when he heard this. He was like an enraged lion. The position of the Fortune God dynasty wasn't just a title to show off. At the same time, it involved a lot of benefits. He absolutely couldn't give up. He had already lost his most beloved son. Now, even the position of Moon City's City Lord, which he relied on for survival, was about to be removed. This had undoubtedly touched the absolute bottom line in his heart. He absolutely couldn't back down anymore. East Heavenly Venerate, you are only of the same rank as me. What qualifications do you have to deprive me of the position of Moon City's City Lord? The Moon City Lord's expression was extremely sinister. He was like a cornered beast, and his eyes were bloodshot. Yishuan watched from the side and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This East Heavenly Venerate was really powerful. Yishuan's original plan was to use this matter to eliminate the Moon City Lord from the Middle Heavenly Venerate selection. No matter who he supported, it would all be for naught. As for the several times he had schemed against him, he would deal with it later. However, the East Heavenly Venerate had actually turned the situation around with a flip of his hand. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to remove the position of Moon City's City Lord. For the Moon City Lord, he was naturally enraged to the extreme. However, the other Heavenly Venerates' eyes lit up when they heard this. There were many positions in the Fortune God dynasty, but only the East, South, West, and North Heavenly Venerates, as well as the other 9 City Lords of the 10 great divine cities, could be compared to the Moon City Lord. It could be said that there were only a handful of them. Once one became a City Lord, one would have monstrous authority and become one of the few unparalleled figures in the entire Fortune God dynasty. Originally, these positions weren't vacant. However, If the Moon City Lord's position was removed, then wouldn't the vacant position be their opportunity? Although Moon City was still under attack, in their opinion, it was only a matter of time before Moon City was taken back. When that time came, they would be one of the few terrifying existences in the world. I'm only of the same rank as you now. However, I will soon become a middle heavenly venerate. When that time comes, I will naturally have the qualifications to remove you from your position. Do you think that I won't dare to make a move against you when you bring disaster to Moon City? The East Heavenly Venerate said righteously. Become a middle heavenly venerate? Taoist Eastern Heavenly Venerate. I think it's too early for you to be happy. How confident are you in becoming a middle heavenly venerate? Just as the East Heavenly Venerate finished speaking, a majestic figure flew into the main hall in a streak of light. When they saw the figure flying into the hall, everyone's expression suddenly turned solemn. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.